Hello, everyone. Just had to make sure that the microphone was actually working right now. It's Saturday and we're starting a little early. I want to add a quotation that I saw the other day, which is perfect. And it was, I think, Teddy Roosevelt who said it, which is comparison is the thief of joy. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing. We are going to be stealing joy from people as we academically, surgically take a look at just a few of the Yoko Taro verse with Drakengard. It occurred to me, by the way, the other week that there's actually another thing besides Danganronpa that's left, and that's the Zero Escape series. Zero Escape series is also a trilogy that's done and over with. So that's another one. Just as a reminder, there won't be a watch along next week. Instead, I'll be working with friends to. It depends. If we get the raid or the day one raid completion Destiny 2 for the reprise new raid next week done on Friday, then I'll stream on Saturday. If it goes into Saturday, I might still stream next week. We'll see. We'll see how tired I am. But anyway, how's it going? Shiny Adino, Javier, Turish. Is that you, Tish? Under a different name? Franz, how's it going? Drip God, always good to see you. Wade, how's it going? Wesley? Elfina, always nice to see you. So, let's see. How come I see you on like regular chat? Okay, here we go. Are we going 3, 1, 2? Probably not. I say we go 1, 2, and 3. See, we're gonna watch this in series order, not. I don't know. It kind of doesn't matter, does it? We probably should do 3, 1, 2, shouldn't we? We'll see. Hey Vash, how's it going? But yeah, no, we're gonna steal some joy today. It's funny the other day, Franz, when Boo was saying, uh, when I was saying, man, wouldn't it be nice if we were able to just like surgically talk about the critical points of like Near Automata and talk about what's good and what's not good? And he absolutely hated the idea. I'm like, oh boy, nobody tell him that I do this every Saturday. I think I really want to do 1, 2, and 3. I think if when we eventually get to like Castlevania, that I'll do in chronological order, or maybe even Kingdom Hearts. We could technically do the Dark Seeker Saga, as they've called it, once I get Union Cross out of the way. But yeah, just if you are new here, since I see some new faces, always glad to see you. Thank you. Yes, I do stream out Saturdays. Thank you for coming. And we're starting earlier because I tend to be long winded with these things. What we're doing is we're first going to be watching and marathoning all of the recapitulations for the particular series. We're honoring dead series that are no longer here. And it's going to be kind of minimized in the background. I'm going to be talking over it. It's going to be watch along slash commentary. And then afterwards, we're going to pull up Tier Maker. And what we're going to do is we are going to rate and rank these games. And it's not going to be as simple as just rate them in the order of how much you liked them. No, 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 no. We're going to take 5 categories. We're going to compile them together. Although, quite frankly, I went ahead and said story, characters, and combat because I kind of feel like those are the pillars in all these games so far that are what people think about when you think about a Drakengard game. That's the fundamental thing I want you to think about here, is when people say describing a Drakengard game, a Dragon Dragoon game, what are really the 5 core pillars that hold up that experience, that makes it unique, that makes it identifiably different than other RPG series, than other games in general? And they have to be comparable parts for all 3 games, which in this case, in this series, is actually to be pretty easy. All 3 of them are very similar in a lot of areas. So I get the feeling we can probably make the categories easier in this one, but they need to be big ones that matter, big ones that we can talk about, that we can actually have some context, some nuance, compare some apples to some apples. We can't do some overgeneralizing nonsense. But yeah, Drakengard overall, by the way, is a series that's kind of relatively new. Because when I did Near, which is now Near Gestalt, so many years ago, I really didn't touch many other games until probably Drakengard only recently, and I kind of popped off 1, 2, and 3 pretty quickly. So we'll see. Oh, how muddled I am, this audio. Oops. Hold on. There we go.
Released by Kavi in the year 2003 on the PlayStation 2,
I need to lower my own audio on
action
this.
hack-and-slash game with RPG elements. Written and directed by Yoko Taro alongside Sawako Notori.
By the way, the theme song that plays right here in the beginning of the game that I use also for the intro here is not a separate track anywhere else in the entire game. So in order to get a clean recording of it, I actually had to just take it directly from the game itself. So that's why if you listen very closely, you'll notice there's combat noises or intro movie noises in it. Because there's not a clean separate thing on there, as far as I know. They only use a song, which is a really good song, only in this intro. Oh, this was made during the era when I had an intro.
As well as story missions that elaborate more on the companions. In addition, up to 5 endings may be unlocked by various criteria, though the normal ending would influence the sequel game, and the 5th ending would spawn a timeline for the Nier series, both of which will be covered here. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. As the game begins, it's the year 1099 in the world of Midgard as dragons still roam the earth and two great powers, the Union and the Empire, are at war over control of a goddess.
Some of the design elements of this is that they initially tried to make a sort of Dynasty Warriors-esque combat game. You have to remember that this game came out over 20 years ago, and people forget that Yoko Taro has been making games for a very long time, and despite how popular he is now, he was not popular back then. He really wasn't.
In that rage, he seeks to finish the creature.
His games didn't gain a lot of acclaim. Square barely acknowledged him. He was just kind of there.
He defends the dragon from attackers while she thinks, knowing that despite their hatred of each other's race, they need each other right now to live.
You always love the introduction of the recaps. I do too, honestly.
Fuse it into one, producing such power that immediately refreshes and revives the pair. Tolerating Kaim as a rider, the Red Dragon takes to the sky to aid the Union.
So one of the things that this game really tried to establish early on is that there's a lot of blood. People just have geysers of blood everywhere. Get used to shooting cubes in the sky, by the way. Shooting cubes in the sky is something that's in all 3 games, and I have to say I never found that fundamentally interesting.
As Kaim heads into the castle alone, the Red Dragon reminds him they share a life now, so if he dies, she dies too, warning him he can't.
The Dynasty Warrior levels, though, it's the ground combat in Drakengard 1, I can't talk. It was always very slow. Like, look how plodding this is. It really isn't as smooth or as dynamic or as well honed as Dynasty Warriors, but Dynasty Warriors has a lot of practice with that. They've mastered their craft. This is just trying to ape it a little bit. Credit for having a profile picture that's trying to animate itself.
However, on the road, the Red Dragon shares with them all she heard
it kind of feels like old school PC games. They did this a lot, by the way. They don't want to animate faces, so they have isometric faraway shots because they want to have the profile pictures be the faces, but they don't really animate the faces there either. So they took a couple shortcuts. They were working with a budget. With the exception of Automata, all of Yoko Taro's games are pretty budget. And probably the newer ones, actually, like the mobile games. They probably put some money behind those.
Some group called the Watchers. He finds a dying elf who tells him the Cult of the Watchers has a shrine they took everyone to.
The Cult of the Watchers is something that takes place in the games, as well as actually has some stuff that goes into Nier.
Suggesting they hurry to the desert temple. However, Kaim is interrupted by a young man, begging him to save his village nearby in the Fairy Valley under siege by the Empire, but without hesitation, Kaim
like many Japanese grim dark stories, they really wanted to make their main character guts. Berserk was a very big inspiration for a lot of the characters in world setting here. Very bleak, a lot of twisted characters, a lot of variations of a lot of very twisted variations, and not really twisted like for the sake of being what's the word they use? Deconstructive. Because some people would say this is a deconstruction of JRPG action things. I would disagree with that. Deconstruction means that you're taking a look at the things that people think are great and actually making a point with showing out their flaws. There is no point in showing out the flaws here. These are just actually flawed people.
The hermit tries to
They make
comfort
no
Dragon,
pretense
who
for
says just
attempting to
like one of his
justify,
brothers,
rationalize, or
but it turns out
contextualize
this
the
is just a
violence
trick,
here.
and the Enneavar
Kaim
actually
literally
is
just
dead.
straight up loves killing
Leonard
things.
apologizes for endangering them all, though the fairy
He
reveals
wakes
to
up and
even more
chooses
shame that
violence
the secret
every
truth,
single day.
The only reason Leonard survived his home being burned down is because he has a fetish for little boys and was away pleasuring himself in the woods at the time. Entering the scene, the king of the fairies approaches them.
And then you get that, you get the
knowing
priest
he
character,
teases
but
their
it
friends
turns
in the
out
desert are in danger.
he's
Leonard joins Kaim on
pedophile,
his journey as they
and
hurry now to
also
the desert
the only
temple,
reason
finding
he
Furia
survived the
there
rest of his
herself.
family living is because he was on
She
the woods
tells him Inuar
masturbating.
and Verdele have been taken, asking Kaim to save them, and the red dragon looks into Furiai's heart, telling Kaim there is an illicit passion within
Saying
her
Footy
he
Eye, by the
suppressed.
way, for some
After
reason
rescuing
is difficult
Verdele,
for me.
whose packed price was his hair, he shares that the Empire is seeking the
I feel
seeds
rough
of
for this guy because
resurrection
his
and
packed
will
price was
appear
his
when
hair,
Horus
but at the
seeks
same
the
time, at
birth,
least a tattoo
leading
makes
him
his
to
like
kill Furiai
baldness
too.
look cool.
Undead wraiths and
I don't
silver
understand why they made
spirits
Verdele have like
efforts
these
to
sort
prevent the
of
desert
gaunt,
seal from being
ghoulish
destroyed.
eyes.
As they return to camp with no sign of Inuar,
Verdele is also the
falling
one
apart.
person here where I would say
Verdele hears a
does
strange
have a little
voice,
bit
and
of a
the red
twist of
dragon
depth to him
clarifies it's
because
Inuar
at
who
least
provided
he's
Furiai
trying
jail.
to be a
More
decent
interested in
person,
the chance
even
to
though
kill
he,
Inuar
quite
Kratos,
frankly, is
Kaim
just a very
investigates,
selfish
while at the
person.
same
But he's a
time,
selfish
insane
person in the
agents of
context of there's all sorts of
approach
crazy
the
shit
spirits
around
of
him.
Water and fire, Undine and Salamander, seeking a pact with her.
Udine and
Leading the way,
Salamander
he
taking up
introduces herself
her.
as Ariosh, sharing her
Ariosh,
principles with
in my
Inuar,
opinion, just
wondering
made
if there are
very
any
little
children
sense.
about. Suddenly lunging herself onto Kaim, Kaim struggles to throw Ariosh off as she tries to eat his flesh, and Verdele is forced to place a seal on the cannibal, though they still opt to take her with them to protect her and others from her madness.
Because in my opinion,
Ariosh's spirits
Kaim would have
confirm
just
the
killed
desert
her.
seal has been broken,
I really
so
don't
no
know
seals
why
left
Kaim
are the
didn't
ancient
kill
temple of the
her.
goddess herself. Encountering
He's
a
killed
horde of
people for
barkers with
literally
children lying
less.
on board, the red dragon senses that, despite Ariosh's pleading, the elf does not seek to actually help them.
One of the things
As
I
the
think
food
this
is
game was
destroyed,
probably
Leonard
more,
smells
more well
blood and
known
notices
for was
Ariosh
the
feeding
dragon
dead
riding
bodies of the
combat.
children,
There really
shocked
aren't a
and
lot of
asking
games,
why.
and
It's
even now
revealed
that
she
do
once
that.
had children of her own, but they were killed by the Empire, and without a
Everybody
family, she
here
only
is
let her
completely
loneliness
selfish.
induce
That's the one
madness
big
with death.
takeaway. The spirits are
Unfortunately,
very
they are too late in
selfish.
preventing the seal from being broken as well.
The seal
The seal
bearers
hurried back to
are,
the
for the
desert.
most part, incredibly
Meanwhile,
selfish.
captured
It's just a
Inuar
bunch of
curses his
miserable
weakness and
people
headed
working
to
together
protect
due to
his fiancée,
circumstance.
when a dark
Everybody
voice
here
speaks
is
to his
miserable.
insecurity, telling him there is a way to free
Freya has
him
an
from her
incestuous
burden
relationship. She
and
does not have an
purpose, and his
incestuous
life
relationship with
will go on.
Kaim
The voice
because
tells
they
her
never
that
get it
Inu's
on.
strength
Kaim does
is
not
powerful
reciprocate
pact with the
that.
dragon, and
She
this
does,
time,
however,
Inuar's
wish that
eyes
there
glow
was an
red.
incestuous,
As the group returns to camp, they are met
relationship.
by
Do not
Inuar,
flag me,
now
YouTube.
boasting a pact with the dragon as well for the mere price of his songs. Asserting he is now strong enough to protect
Because
Furiai
she
by
wants it,
himself,
he doesn't
he
want
offers
it.
to take her away.
So,
Kaim steps between them.
those thoughts just live in her
The dragon
head.
claims Inuar
And the
is
dragons
right,
all know
and
it because
Inuar
they can
shoots
read into
back.
your
He would
head and your
sacrifice even his
heart.
sister for revenge. As Inuar's eyes glow red, he attacks Kaim while his black dragon sets upon the red. Inuar overwhelms and blows away Kaim as he looks over to the dragon.
Typical
seeing the
Square
red-ass
Enix, so
black
at least they're going to put their
dragon
budget in
clamping
like the
down on
big
his partner.
cutscenes.
Reminded of how his parents died again, Kaim charges the black
What year was this
dragon and
again?
shoots a fire blast his way, though the red dragon
Doesn't look half
quickly
bad for
blocks the
whatever
attack
year it
to
came
save
out.
Kaim. Verdele attempts to stand before Inuar, but the hierarch is easily cut down. Inuar forces himself onto Footy-Eye and knocks her out as Kaim and the red dragon struggle to recover.
Kaim barely
helpless
wants
watch
anything
him
but to
toss
kill,
away
and
his
don't
bark
you
and fly
forget it.
away with the goddess. After Kaim waits
Okay,
for
so
Verdele, the red dragon to
the Black
heal,
Dragon,
they
just
send
like in
Inuar into a
Drakengard 2 when we get to it,
territory.
has this
Nearby,
weird
hidden
sort of,
away, a mother tells her son, Sarai, she
I don't know,
wants
like
to
the way
free
their
him,
tail
but
and
she
their abdomen
dies
section
when
is,
the
it's
boy
so
is born.
unusually shaped
Not
that they
long
tuck their
after,
feet
he makes a
around
pact with
it,
the stone
and I
giant
never understood
Golem, and soon
biologically,
runs
like, that's
into
such a
Kaim on
weird
his march to
design.
the Empire, telling him his village was lost. Hearing they also seek the cult, Sarai begs to come along as they also took his sister and mention he paid the price of time for his pact. The Red Dragon explains that means he will never age and will forever be alone as a child, but Sarai insists he'll have Golem as his friend and is unafraid of battle, relating himself
I'm
to his son,
inconsistent
the
with, by
little
the
hero.
way, I
Kaim
sometimes say
shares that his
Sarai
parents
and then
were killed by the
Sarai.
dragon, to which the
I'm
Red
also
Dragon
telling
holds
some
up
of these
comments, seeing
technically
how he
out
can
of
persuade her to
order
protect with
in terms of
humanity.
how you can encounter
However,
them in the
Sarai
game.
spots where
In
his
the
sister
game, a lot of
Morgana
these side quests
disappeared and wants
appear
to
on certain
investigate,
paths if
but
you
while
did
Kaim
certain
isn't
missions or
there,
leveled up
Golem
certain
points
ways,
out it's also
or
a
made
crucial
certain
watcher.
choices. It kind
Collectively,
of gave you a
the group
little bit
leaves,
of
and as
choice
they
in terms
travel,
of where you can
Sarai
go in
shares
terms
that
of
their
side
mother
quests
once
you can
scolded
do.
and hit his little sister Mana a lot,
And
but never
you
hit
can't
her, who plays
exactly
a
do
role in
all of them,
Baltimore.
but you do need all of them in
Unfortunately,
order
find no
to get
clues.
all of
The
the
Red Dragon hears
cutscenes.
the death cry of the fairies, indicating the three
For
seals
example,
have
like
been
this
broken
cutscene,
and
for
Goddess's
example, where
death
you
is
choose to
certainly
go out all
announced.
the way and
At this
rescue
time,
Sere,
Greenland gathers all
and
of
you
its
go in this
forces to
arena,
prepare
stuff
for
like
their
that, you
army
can
for final
completely
battle.
miss that
Empire
entire side
surprises them
quest.
with
But to be
immense
fair,
war
it
monsters
doesn't really
looming
matter.
over the
This I
horizon
thought
that
was
halt their
really good
advance.
visuals. This
Time
whole
the Red Dragon's attack on the titanic
ginormous, this was a
Cyclops is
cool
enough to
idea
turn
for a
the tide,
battle.
earning
Even back
victory
then
for
and
the
now,
Union.
you're fighting literally this
Just then,
giant
powerful magic rained from the
Titanic
sky,
monster that just
annihilating
comes over the
everything, and
edge,
the entire
and
Union
then
army,
right
as
when
well
you
as the
finish it,
battlefield, was
everybody
wiped
gets
out in a
nuked,
single
everybody's
bombardment.
dead, bodies on the
Originating from
ground.
the Empire's floating fortress, barely panics and believes
Things
it can be
escalate
working
very
the
quickly
Watchers
from this
as
point where
Sub-Zero
you're
forms
battling the
cannot reach its
Watchers.
altitude. Within, Inuart has been so blinded by love he no longer recognizes who Furiai is, yet is obsessed with the notion, battling Kaim in the air atop the Black
This is
Dragon,
also the beginning of
battling
where
with
you
him
start getting
closely.
into the divergence
Kaim
of the
edges out a
endings.
win in the dogfight as Inuart pulls back, and they
Which is a
ride
shame
some
because
aircraft to
all of the
follow
endings
into
are
the
actually pretty
fortress.
interesting. This is the second
Butchering
or
his
third
way
time
through
I've
to
ever
the
done
inner
that.
sanctum, Kaim finds he is too late and his sister has already been sacrificed. However, stepping out and revealing
That's the only
themselves
time you
to
ever
the
see Kaim
ominous
do
voice behind
emotion.
Inuart is a young girl in red and the
He's
high
mad
priestess
because he
of the
couldn't kill
Watchers,
somebody
Mana.
himself.
The Red Dragon urges Kaim to focus his rage on stopping the seeds of resurrection that now threaten to appear with all the
Mana's
seeds.
line, by the way, were
Mana
always
dances in
very
celebration of
ridiculous. They
victory
just
as
sounded
Inuart
absurd.
storms in, and the shock
Like
to
they're
see
meant to sound
Furiai kill
intimidating
snaps him out of his possession.
and alien.
He attempts
They
to
just
seize
sound
Mana,
really
but the
silly.
little girl shows she is not to be underestimated, and defeated, he mourns how he was used as a fool. Taking the body of Furiai with him, Inuart resolves to use the seeds of resurrection to instead resurrect the goddess, but in his grief he ignores the warnings that the seeds can only produce evil, and Kaim flies in pursuit.
This is where they start getting into the very
As the
vague
seeds lie
writing.
scattered throughout the
This is the
Imperial
sort of
City,
vagary
Verily
that
shares the
feeds
legends
Kingdom
say
Hearts
when
sort of
mankind
level of
enters the
writing,
seeds,
where we
the
keep
blue
things
world
just
opens
gray
to
enough to where we
the
don't
Red
really
Dragon
confirm or
rises
deny
against
anything,
this.
and therefore we
Empty
can
and
write
free
more
seas arrive
stuff
an
because we
ancient
never
dragon
fully
and
wrote
its
it to begin
children,
with.
so terrible and mighty that even the Red Dragon is afraid of the sacred worm. Dragging her on, Kaim
The fact that
his partner into
the
battle.
dragons
Red
are
Dragon is
actually
surprised she fares
pretty,
better than expected, edging out a win against the
I
legendary
don't want to say
beast.
ugly, but
Afterwards,
very,
she thanks Kaim for
they
helping
don't
her
look very
grow, and is
graceful.
surprised to discover a
They look
feeling other than
brutish.
scorn for a human.
They look like
With a new
nightmarish sort
bond
of
between them, they
creatures.
dive into the Imperial capital to challenge Mana
Oh,
and
we
her
got a
demon
bot.
soldiers. However, Verily refuses to let Kaim kill a child, no matter how evil, and instead wishes to seal the evil within her. He begins to chant his spell, but the spirit within Mana defies him, growing larger than the spell can contain, and rises into the sky as a literal giant. As the pair takes down the giant instrument of God, she reverts to her normal size, laughing at them for rejecting their resurrection, claiming she is still loved by the gods and is unafraid of death. In fact, she desperately insists they kill her to appease her mother, and the Red Dragon says she will never be forgiven and will live on, despised by the whole world as her punishment. Content to see her suffering from this decision, Kaim and Verily consider that they must find a new goddess at once and replace the seal. The Red Dragon asks Kaim to comfort her, and agreeing, Kaim pets her, and feeling better, she volunteers herself as the next seal.
It is interesting that,
Kaim is concerned to hear this, though she says to do it before she changes her mind. Understanding, Verily bows in respect before the unbelievable dragon that would sacrifice its pride for the sake of saving humanity. As the duo spends their final moments together, Kaim is hurt to tears to lose yet another trusted friend, and the Red Dragon whispers to him that he will be the one and only human to know her true name, Angelus. As humanity
Yeah,
gets a
because
second chance
Angelus
thanks
only
to
tells
revival
Kaim
of
that.
once hated
Angelus doesn't
race,
tell her
Kaim
name to
stands up
literally
to
anybody
face the
else.
unknown future
They
leader.
only just call her the Red Dragon. That's the reason why through this entire recap, I refer to Angelus as
Butchering his
the
way
Red
through to
Dragon,
the
because
inner
that's how the
sanctum,
story
Kaim
knows it.
finds the High Priestess
That's
of
something
the
special
Watchers
for
as
that.
a little girl, and as Sayori points, his lost twin sister.
The
Mana.
animations, by the way, here
He
are also
blames
really
himself
good.
for her turning out like this, as Mana still yearns for their mother's approval.
Had to put that
Hearing her mother
self-insert at
is
the very
dead now,
top
she
there.
dances again, and a malevolent possessed voice speaks out alongside her own. She proclaims that she is loved by their saviors, and anyone who does not embrace their love as well will die. Apologizing, Sayori knows what he must do for the sister he cannot save, and asking for Golem's help, the Earth Giant walks up slowly and smashes down, crushing
Just
the
straight
city
up
and
kills her.
instrument of the gods in a
Simple
single blow.
violence, simple
However, things are
solutions to
not
simple
over as strange
problems.
rumblings begin, and elsewhere, Inuart is free of his possession and rushes to free Furiai. He then tells her they now have a chance to give birth to the world and become as gods, laughing madly at their opportunity for survival. Outside, above the Imperial capital, logic and reason collapse in the world as portals of light open up, and dozens of giant baby-like angels with wings of lightning descend down among the ruins of the
And this is
city,
where it's like,
preparing to
okay,
meet
things are just
destruction.
super odd now.
Verdalle is shocked at the true form of the Watchers as the Red Dragon ascends to its final chaos form and joins Kaim in battling the grotesqueries in the air and on the land.
I like how they
As
turned
allies
it
spread
grotesqueries.
thin, Verdalle hides
This is
in
where
fear
things
as
felt,
the
I think,
Elvish
actually
approaches a
really
fellow
like this.
Watcher hungry for a meal. Other Watchers soon surround
I think
Arya
it's
as she
perfectly
welcomes
good
the
that your
feast,
team
but
gets
is
slowly
thoroughly overrun
killed by
devour,
the...
and Verdalle takes the
Because, like, it's not like an
destruction to
anti-hero
change the world's
Suicide
life.
Squad things. These
As
aren't
a baby
anti-heroes you're
larger,
supposed to cheer
Phoenix
for. These are
rises
terrible
up,
people who
Leonard
do
opts to
terrible
clear the way
things,
forward for the rest of
and
them.
they just happen to be in a bad
Facing the fort
situation.
alone, his fairy
And
comes out in a panic to try
there's
and
no
vindicate
redemption
for
for
not
anybody.
sacrificing
I
himself,
really like
knowing
that,
will
actually.
fall too. Grabbing his toxic partner, Leonard is no longer afraid to die, declaring death is not the end of hope, as he self-destructs at the last second, annihilating the mob with him. As Kaim and the group move ahead, Sari senses the Queen Beast controls time and bitterly wonders if he means
It's
the end of
interesting
the
that
Great
Kaim
Time
is the
the
only
key to
person who
purifying the
actually,
world.
from what we
Sari
can
begins to
see,
burn up, and the golem explains
actually
he
makes
is
friends with
experiencing a
his
reaction
pact
to his
partner.
lost time, demanding Sari
Because
break the pact
Vertalays is
now.
killed.
Sari offers to release the
Golem,
Great
I
Time
don't
Lock
think,
within
is
him,
really a
which would freeze the
friend
Queen Beast for all
to
eternity,
Sarai.
remembering the tale
I
he inspired
think
him
that
and
maybe, I don't know, it's hard to tell. Sarai,
In
maybe.
this story, a young warrior drank all
I don't know
of
if
time,
friendship's the
kept
word
him
I would
young and
use.
strong. But when the world was bathed in blood, he gave the world his time, growing old and dying, but giving the world a new life. However, as the
In
Queen Beast
hindsight, I
consumes
probably
the
would have cut
world,
out that piece in
swelling
editing,
inside,
because learning
Kaim
about
and
the
Red
story of
Dragon
the little
choose not to
boy
sacrifice
who
Sari,
stored
but
time, like,
instead
that's
dive into the heart of the
interesting.
beast
That's really just
themselves.
lore that actually doesn't mean anything for
When
the
more
story.
God rejected, the duo prepare for a fierce battle, though as they clash with the beast, time within
Guardian.
is
Yeah,
ruptured,
Guardian I
and the
think is a
two
better
ascend
word
through
for
a
his
portal into the year
relationship.
2003
I wouldn't say
in
friends, more
Shinjuku,
like Guardian.
Tokyo. The Red Dragon wonders if this is the world of the gods, as pieces of
Kaim
the
is really the
natural
one who
angel
makes the
break
fully,
off,
I don't know,
prepares to sing a song of destruction.
I,
Matching
the way that you
light-and-dark
beat this, by the
intonations of
way,
Queen,
besides
the battle
memorizing all,
across
like,
time
what
and
is it,
space ends in victory
159
for
notes,
Kaim and the Red
is if
Dragon,
you
as
pause the
dissolves and
game
her salt-like
and see the
ashes
pattern
flow
that's
across the
about, you
city.
unpause,
However,
just
after the
enter
finish
the
of
exact thing you
159 hour
saw, and then
combat,
pause
the pair
again.
have little time to
And
celebrate,
the
as
the
a pair of
input
missiles from
buffering
the
is
Defense
going
Force
to
strike
accept it.
true and kill them. Kaim would die immediately as the Red Dragon 2 dissolves away.
I think as a
falling
joke
into
ending, this is
carelessly
hilarious.
atop Tokyo Tower. Drakengard has enjoyed the success of selling over 650,000 copies worldwide. Thank you for watching this recap. I hope it helped. And if you
Otherwise, I
like
hate the
this, check
rhythm
out the
game.
recap for the other Drakengard or Nier games. I know the timeline can
I
seem
never found
confusing.
it fun.
Subscribe for more recaps
I found it
like
interesting.
this, share with someone who could use it, and
It is
shout out
very
to patrons and
unforgiving.
channel members. If you would like to support the
And
show
I'm
yourself,
glad that
please follow the links in
they
the
didn't do it
description below.
again. Cough,
Thanks for
cough,
watching,
cough.
and I'll see
They
you
totally
in the
did it
next
again.
Battlefield.
And remember, this was made by Kavia. Kavia made this, and then they also made the original Nier Gestalt, Nier Replicant, before it was redone recently. And Kavia, bless their heart, is not very good at making combat. They are a small studio. They are a limited studio, and boy does it show. But yeah, the major pillars of Drakengard 1. You can easily say story, characters, and combat. Should we say world slash level design? I think we can say world and level design because there are some dungeons you go to, quote unquote. They're really just kill boxes. But level design is a thing. I think world and level design is very fair to say. I think that's a big part of this game. I'm not sure what we would do for a fifth pillar here. Combat, air combat. I'm not gonna separate air combat from combat. Like ground combat and air combat, yes, those are important things in all three games. But I'm gonna lump them in the same category. I don't think they deserve their own separate categories. Well, no, actually, maybe they do. Because the ground combat you do in all three games is its own systems. And the whole appeal of a lot of this is the fact that you do jump up on a dragon and do your thing as a dragon. And the dragon systems, I think the dragon systems could be separate enough. World story characters. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. Yeah, you know what? I think for the sake of distinction, because in my mind already, I can absolutely say that ground combat is stronger in some than others, and air combat is stronger in some than others, and those are not the same lists. And I think credit should be given where credit's due. I think I will do world slash level design. Theming. I'm gonna work theming into story. Story's gonna be kind of like the writing, theming, catch-all. Theme and story are very closely tied to the series. Yeah, they're all terrible. I'm just kidding. Although not really. The whole focus is to be like, these are all terrible people, you're not supposed to like them. Like, Angelus didn't really sacrifice herself to help the world, she sacrificed herself to help Kaim. And Kaim isn't, completely brain dead. He isn't completely heartless. The fact that he can reach out and care for something like a dragon is more character depth to him. And him pacting with the fearsome red dragon is pretty interesting. Although, I don't know. We're not going to go into expanded lore, keep that in mind. We're just judging the games, which can or cannot help some of these games, which will or will not help some of these games. When did I do Drakengard 1? Hold on, let me see.
Watching, and I'll see you on the next.
Alright, so I literally made this last year, that much is true. But this game came out in 2003. Okay, so it's not 20 years old yet, but it's about to be. Okay. There's that. The other ending, which I think is ending B, the one where you actually, what is it, bring Furiai to a seat of destruction, and then she becomes this crazy demon, and then you have to kill her. That's the one where it actually comes out that, she had feelings for Kain. That one was more prominent, because it's only alluded to in the other two endings, and that one didn't exactly happen, but it was interesting. I think that was still a very I kind of wish all three of the endings happened, because I think you could have that. I think you could have where um what's his face? I can't remember his name already. He's that forgettable. Um Harp Boy. I can't remember his name. But Harp Boy, after he something art. I can't remember. He's that forgettable in my eyes. Because he really doesn't do much. Inuart, thank you. So Inuart, I think Inuart could have gone to the Sea of Destruction, put Furiai in there. She becomes a demon. We got to kill her anyway. And then in the end, he also could have been absorbed in, and that still could have been a preceding event to Drakengard 2. I think that's perfectly fine. And you still would have needed to replace the seal. You still would have had the ending where Angelus has to sacrifice herself. I think it would have been cool. The joke ending aside was actually really cool, but I think you still could have had the ending. I think I would have preferred the ending where Ceres sacrifices himself. The whole concept of that giant demon in the end becoming pregnant with time is it's very, I don't know, very surreal. Because I felt like some of the endings, at least A and B, certainly could have been combined. I don't think they were that different. But yeah. Moving on to Drakengard 2. Preface, by the way, I remember, Drakengard 2, people saying that as like the black sheep of it. Is it really? I don't think it is. I think it actually does a good job of keeping in line with everything the other Drakengard games do. The fact that Yoko Taro wasn't as active as a person in its development, in my opinion, didn't prevent it from being a good game on its own. I think that's fanboy bias that attempts to slander Drakengard 2, because objectively, it's not a bad game compared to its Drakengard 3 and Drakengard 1. It really isn't. But let's find out. Let's watch it again.
Released by Cavia in 2005 on the PlayStation
Cavia is the
2,
one who did this.
Drakengard 2 would be retconned to take place directly after a mirror version of Drakengard A's ending in a separate timeline. Directed by Akira Yasui and written by Sawako Notori.
It may be a black sheep, but none of the three are amazing games. That's exactly what I said about Parasite Eve.
Though only the first ending would have its story continue in additional official media and will be the one covered here. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size.
Yeah, Drakengard 2 only had one piece of extra media that kind of talked about its ending, and that's the ending I decided to go with.
5 seals bind the red dragon and thus prevent the
In this one, it did at least have very distinct endings that could not coexist.
And for each seal,
And this one I felt was a very logical continuation of that world in ending A, where, okay, now the world basically has a seal that's in a dragon, let's talk about the consequences of it, let's talk about how society moves on and builds itself around it.
Assesses Noe's strength and finds Noe's power is the real deal.
At least this game isn't afraid to show faces, by the way.
Reminds him of General Auror, the former leader of the Knights, who died 3 years
Kaguya got a little bit of
before
money
his
now, a little bit of budget to start animating these faces. The profile arts look good, by the way. I do not like how they wrote Sere in this game, because this is 18 years later, 20 years later, something like that. So, yes, Sere he doesn't age physically. That doesn't mean he doesn't age mentally. He wouldn't still talk like a little kid, you know? He's gonna talk like an older man. He's just in the body of a kid, which to me would have been more interesting if they did have him talk like an old man, but he's in the body of a kid. To me, that's more interesting.
Within, they find prisoners
Having a super for your dragon combat is actually kind of cool, not gonna lie.
Paying for the crime of trying to destroy the world. Noe wonders why there are people here at all, and Eris explains that each district there is a key that cleanses the air.
I think people might not like this game as much because it feels like a different game that was made into a game for this series, even though it carries the themes well. I don't know about that. I really don't. I haven't seen enough persuasive evidence to that effect.
Foretold by Sere, declaring him as such, though to be able to speak to dragons without a pack like he can is very unusual. Returning to Gizmore, he quickly deploys them again with Guardian Zangpo to clear his district of invaders. While
Look at these massive rooms with nothing in it. That's very
Clearing
PS2.
the district of undead with an accursed fog, Noe wonders why the first district did not have
The enemy designs, by the way, the attention to detail in these models, much improved.
Moving to check on the key, Noe once again objects to Imperial prisoners being used as fodder, though Mana, now grown up, steps forward to volunteer to make the deadly trek through the fog instead of the other prisoners. Zangpo agrees, but after a few hours, strange rumbling can be felt as the fog lifts, and the Guardian orders the Knights to investigate. From Eris, Noe learns the unimpressive lieutenant was made a Guardian because he gained inhuman power from entering a pact, as General Gizmore believes strength is everything. Arriving at the Flame Deus Key, Mana moves to destroy it to stop the suffering of her people, but Zangpo repeats that the key protects the world from
Fun fact with Legna, he was a dragon that killed Kaim's parents, the one in Uart Road. So here's the thing, he is definitely the one in Uart Road, because they literally say that in this game. But they never quite say that he's the black dragon that killed Kaim's parents. That's not stated in any of the games, to my knowledge.
Both Mana and Zangpo fall after their battle, though the Guardian bursts into flame as well, as Eris explains when a key is destroyed, so too
Because, yeah, there is a black dragon that Kaim remembers killing his parents, but there are lots of dragons, so I don't know.
Even though she caused the death of a Guardian, it was in self-defense of herself and her people.
Though, I can believe it because there aren't as many dragons running around these days. There really are just a handful of dragons. In fact, it really does seem like it's just that.
Because her people were directly being sacrificed to them, but also because
It's said probably in the novels, kind of. I think kind of is something that Yoko Taro leans on. He doesn't want to commit one way or the other. One of the things that's rough about Drakengard 2, that also, again, very budget game, is that they only have animation in some of the scenes. Like the CGI ones, sure, but even like the ones where they're using an engine, they very rarely use animation. They're just stills.
Hearing her steal away an airship.
But at the same time, if you're gonna put animation, you might as well at least put it into the character animations themselves in the game, which they did. They look better and they run smoother. And the CGI cutscenes look good too.
Mana eludes Noe's pursuit and he is called back to base, though while walking the streets, he observes the citizens are exploited for tribute by the Knights, who indulge in their daughters otherwise. He also hears the citizens are glad.
Basically, in this one, the whole society that's up there for protecting the world seal is, surprise, surprise, full of people that take advantage of the authority of their position.
General offers Noe Auror's favorite drink, and after Noe accepts, Gizmore reveals 3 years ago he gave the same poison to Auror before he faced the One-Eyed Man. The poison weakens Noe quickly, who is shocked to learn Gizmore murdered Auror, as Gizmore mocks his naivety. Outraged, a strange power suddenly begins to emanate from Noe, turning his hair silver and pupils draconic, as he quickly closes the gap on Gizmo and cuts off his arm in a single swing. Before he completely strikes down the general, Eris
So he has half-dragon powers. It kind of sucks that you really don't in this game regularly. You only use it in the final battle.
The knights are reluctant to declare their savior a traitor, as Eris begs Noe to surrender and not make things worse, reminding him of his promise to always protect her as a knight. Noe reflects how when
Eris, you feel kind of bad for her because she is somebody who genuinely did care about Noe and grew up with him, and they both respected each other, and she's seeing Noe just literally become a different person, both mentally and literally physically, right in front of her, and she feels helpless in that.
Noe discards his knight armor. Elsewhere, we now see Kaim and Angelus, as Kaim is glad to see one of the seals broken. Meanwhile, Legna's body evolves as dragons often do in dire circumstances, turning into a darker blue, almost black form.
I do think it is cool that as Legna evolves, he does turn into the, like, physically the black dragon that was seen in Drakengard 1.
Noe thanks her for the help, though Mana replies she is about to go now and destroy the key of another district. Noe tags along as Mana shows him another village oppressed by the knights as they...
One thing that's also good is that in both Drakengard 1 and 2, and technically 3, you switch between characters in the ground combat, and in this one, it's the differences between the different weapon styles, including magic, very well done. Much better than 1, for sure. They actually felt like different characters.
Water now flows again freely through the valley. Eris arrives, accusing Mana of controlling Noe with her magic, but Noe passes her by, telling her he is of sound mind and is choosing to seek...
The pack prices in this game were stupid, and 3 of them are practically the same thing. Like hers, her pack price was charm. Like, what does that even mean? What is charm? Like, you could argue what is time, yeah, but time is measured. Like, they measurably say, like, your time is taken, i.e. you will not age. Your charm is taken, so you just have sunken eyes, like you don't drink enough water. Like, what? What is that even supposed to mean? And then later, the Earth one, his luster, the hell does that even mean? That's like a variation of saying charm. Like, what does that even mean? It's so dumb. At least when you say you lost your voice, or you lost your hair, or you lost your womb, or even the first guy, you lost your sensation of hunger, like you can never feel satiated. At least that's a measurable thing.
Coming to her senses, Mana adds a citadel housing the key employs
I don't know, the pack prices in this one just seem dumb. The most of the royal knights are dumb in this one. They're just throwaway fodder characters.
The gnomes, paying with his luster, as Yaha claims he did so to try and attract Yurik personally. Undeterred, Yurik strikes him down as Yaha claims he still has...
At least with Yurik, you can also say, like, they took your ability to die away. You know? That's a measurable thing, at least.
Angelus is regaining more of her senses, as Kaim still takes care of her, and the group...
He couldn't style his hair. Yeah, I know, right?
I
lost my luster.
It turns out the informant is Eris, baiting them in with her trap, who is surprised to learn Yurik is alive after all, and mad to see he too turned traitor. Her ambush is interrupted as Kaim enters the battlefield, and Noe is shocked to see the one-eyed man who killed Or is the hero who saved the world 18 years ago. Mana begins to wither, and Noe thinks to pull back for now, as Eris follows him this time, claiming Mana is a witch...
I also agree with Eris's confusion. Why the hell does Noe care so much about Mana? Why does he? He just met this crazy lady.
That was true.
But whatever, you know.
Legna helps shoot down Eris, claiming the past is not so easily reconciled. Out of danger, Mana states Kai made her promise never to forget her past and to live on atoning and being hated by the world. However, she insists her mission to break the keys and save the people...
I do appreciate that they don't nerf Kaim in this. Just because he's not the main character anymore, Kaim is still well known and well feared as literally this berserk character who will absolutely destroy you.
But also sees Kaim has captured her.
Like, nobody's like underestimates Kaim. Nobody says, oh, he's just an old man, a broken old... And everyone's like, oh, Jesus Christ, it's Kaim, get the hell away.
Claiming he's stronger than before, Gizmo duels Noe.
This fight, by the way, the Gizmo fight, mental note, this is one of the best ground battles in the entire franchise. That was a very good fight.
As he chooses to believe in who she is now, swearing to protect her going forward. Fighting their way to the dais, they find Kaim there waiting for them, and Yurik clarifies he's waiting for him. Noe asks why, and Mana figures Yurik is really the missing guardian for this district. Yurik admits this...
I kind of wish they did a little bit more with the shrines themselves. So in the first shrine, they talk about these flowers are, immortal and they represent the dais, and as long as they don't die, like everything's going good. And there's poisonous air sometimes, maybe, but that's not really consistent with all the districts. Like, if you break it, it doesn't matter in some of them. That's not the weak point. This, however, right here, the Kime fight, again, just like with the general, that is, with Gizmor, very good fight.
Relentless, Kime succeeds in killing the Reaper within, and finally freed of his pack, Yurik uses his remaining strength to shove Kime off the edge, sending him falling into the abyss.
Ring out.
Dying a true death,
Sucks to suck.
Yurik is laid to rest as the key disintegrates with him, as Noe somberly leaves to learn where the last key is. Conveniently,
But yeah, no, the Kime fight did not let up. Like, that was a straight up well-made fight. Kime was strong, Kime was fast, Kime was literally like a Dark Souls boss. He's straight up brutal. You had to be on your toes the entire time. It was very satisfying to beat him. And both of them were very varied at fights. They used up different moves and tactics and would pressure you from both near and far. They were both very good bosses. Gizmor and Kime absolutely make up for any of the ground bosses in any of the games. I struggle to think if 3 had any better, but these absolutely, like, just in terms of ground combat, these two had better bosses than anybody in 1. Easily.
The key is an hourglass ahead, falling in his arms. Checking on Legna outside, the Dark Dragon is fine as he takes him to the top of the tower, where they are met by Sere.
Sere continues to be useless. He is so useless in this entire game. He just stands around and whines. He spends his immortality whining.
Sere pleads with her not to break the final seal as it concerns more.
And also, actually, I take that back. He's not immortal. He just doesn't age. He will die one day. He's just not going to age. The Shadow Man thing over here, I think, is very cool. I kind of wish that they did something with this to kind of talk about the gestalts later, because it kind of is indicative of that, isn't it? Hey, Lynn, how are you?
As Legna saves Noe in time, the final key has been broken, and at the same time, the magic binding Angelus dissolves immediately. As her strength returns to her, she destroys the ruins that once hid her and lifts off, and back with the group, Sere is appalled to learn
it's cool also that Angelus is also kind of like her final form still. They didn't just magically de-evolve her.
Shackle the actual final seal, the Red Dragon. Dragons are much stronger than human goddesses.
And this is one of those things where, Noah, you're such a flipping idiot. Don't you realize that the seals you've been breaking have been freeing the Red Dragon? Jesus Christ, man, you screwed over the world again. You literally effed up twice. How do you do this on a global scale? God damn it. And he's kind of right.
In her madness, she brings devastation to everywhere she goes. Noe comments she looks more like a demon, and Legna evolves into a more powerful Black Dragon.
And there you go, you got that Black Dragon form.
Legna adds the Red Dragon's mind is broken, as Angelus explodes in rage, claiming she did not become the final seal for the sake of humanity, but for one man in particular, though she cannot recall his name and curses Verdale.
I like the consistency with the writing of both Angelus as well as Kime. I think it's... See, look how weird his legs are. He has that weird sort of like abdomen hump, see? It's like a weird pelvic bone. It's way more pronounced in it's way more pronounced in the larger forms.
Still unclear in his objective, as he also attacked the keys in each district. Kime does not reply, instead holding Noe back and even protecting him from Angelus's thrashing. Legna explains Kime does not speak because his voice was his pact price with the Red Dragon herself, and Noe now realizes killing the Red Dragon would also kill Kime too. Legna says Kime now...
See, here's a close-up of it. You see how weird it is? How he hooks his legs around that weird abdomen part? It's so weird. He's literally like grabbing his pelvic bone with his legs. He doesn't tuck him under like a bird. It's I don't know, it's just kind of weird. It just looks weird to me. Like, it's a choice, obviously, but yeah. I feel bad for cutting out. If you get a chance, look at this cutscene on YouTube. The whole scene itself, this whole scene is actually really well done. Obviously, I have to cut it down to size, but over here, like, I think that was a really good send-off to Kime and Angelus. That was really good. Surprisingly respectful.
Above, the sky shatters like glass and falls to pieces, revealing a red storm.
And this is where you have the whole thing where, surprise, everything's a ruse.
Not sure what to do, Legna suggests seeking more power from the Holy Dragon's ancient tomb in the sky, dredged up from the distortions in time. He elaborates that the ancient tomb holds relics and knowledge of the Holy Dragons who have survived crises such as this. Finding a lost tomb, they navigate. So
this is where I actually think Drakengard 2 is way more interested in writing that people are giving it credit for.
He hears how a weak man once loved a
So this is
blonde
where he's
girl who was bound by
recapping
a black
Drakengard
The
1.
man then greedily entered a casket and became part of a union. The black dragon would gain enlightenment.
One of these
develop a
things, by
special
the way,
child
does
with
also
special
reiterate
blood.
that
The red dragon
Ferdy
would
I
become a
loved
pawn and
Kime.
key to the new world.
They just
The
won't
man
let
and the
that
woman will
rest.
become fused together in the
And then they become
casket,
fused
creating a new
together, and
breed
basically they become a
creation
new
that would
breed.
usher in a new era. When the red dragon's fury would end, a new
So,
pawn would rise, and this
so
woman would lead
Noe
them to
isn't so
victory.
much born as he's
Noe's
literally
unsure
this
what the voice of
organic
inside the new
slushy
breed,
built from
but
his
Lenore
mother
reveals
and
Noe and tells
his
him to listen further.
male and female
Noe
parental
continues to
units,
share that the gods would use
who
the
may or may
union
not have
again and
been
again, and
alive.
she would meet the new breed, causing a turning point. It then mentions the holy dragon.
This I also think robbed the significance of Noe's relationship with Mana because it was just prophesied to happen that way. And I don't like that because it really wasn't well developed in the game. It's very spontaneous, and you could say, well, it just happened because the prophecy happened, which is what they're saying. But I think that also just kind of robs any sincerity in it. This is plot convenience 101.
She explained she was saved from the brink of death by Sarai, who went on ahead to do something. At this time, Mana now becomes possessed by the gods again, speaking in an alien voice.
But I do like this whole thing, because this to me, I love it when you get this sort. I love when you get the Mana science spin. This dungeon, by the way, was very cool. This was a very cool dungeon.
Helping her break her mental chains, Noe frees Mana, returning
where
her to reality, and
humans
says she's
are
made up her mind
just
about something,
bioengineered
bringing them all
creatures
to the Promised Land.
that dragons made to use as weapons against gods, because dragons and gods are just vying for control of the world, and we just happen to be the tools of war for it. I really like that.
His eye and jump off a cliff to try and escape. Though there was a river to break her fall, she would survive, but lose some of her memory of that time. But she assures Noe she's here by choice.
Yeah, exactly. See, Wesley, like, it's more they did a fusion dance. They became a slurry. They didn't just join that way to make a kid normally.
When the red dragon died, a new goddess has awakened. Arriving, Legna urges Noe to.
And then it's also said that, like, Legna put a little bit of himself in there, and that's why he has half dragon abilities, because he's part dragon. He's just a new race. So basically, he's like the newest human Windows version update.
Noe rejects this, wishing to restore the seal and protect humanity first, but the Black Dragon scoffs at the
No matter which ending you go to, you always end up fighting Legna.
The Black Dragon then sounds
even the one where you agree with him, you end up fighting.
now as an army of holy dragons take to the sky, only to be fired upon by an army of stone golems waiting on the
Somehow these golems snuck up on everybody.
As the explosive battle ensues, Sari and his partner Golem meet with the group, explaining that dragons carry.
And also, is it just me or is Golem bigger in the sequel? Like, look how big he is, Jesus. I don't think he was that big in the last game.
Heard as such in the ancient tomb as well, realizing Legna's real motive in helping him this whole time was a means to an end.
Ending B, you fight Mana. Yeah, you fight like a giant version of Mana flying in the sky. Just like in the first game, you can potentially fight a giant Mana just floating in the sky.
Legna confirms this, adding that they intended to use this tool of the gods against them by having Noe evolve as a new breed within it, thus getting the power he needs to become their ultimate weapon. Against Legna's assault, Noe is no match for his former partner, but he tells Mana he is still driven to save her.
And the power of love awakens his special abilities. Admittedly pretty anime, not gonna lie.
Him wings, Noe awakens his new breed power, rising up as Legna
See?
evolves into
His feet are grasping now this weird, it looks like a pillar, but it's really this weird thing coming out of his body. It's so weird. I can't help but fixate on that. It's just so distractingly weird. I don't know what that design's all about.
Saying goodbye, Noe chooses to defy him and the Book of Seeds as prophecies. Surpassing the strength of his father,
he's just grabbing it.
Legna as he strikes him down, and Sari confirms the other holy dragons are fading away. Wasting no time, Eris urges Sari to begin the sealing ceremony.
How convenient. Out of literally everybody in the entire planet, it turns out the one person who got chosen to be a goddess is the person right next to us. Man, that's convenient.
Eris reflects that the world is once again chained by the gods, with a temporary peace bought by one woman's sacrifice, and having no choice but to continue the cycle they fought so hard against.
And she also sacrifices her
Mana
womb.
looks
Wow, unlucky.
to a future
Twice.
ahead of them regardless, and believes there will be a day where Eris can live a life as an ordinary woman again. Drakengard 2 has enjoyed the success of selling over 210,000 copies worldwide.
210,000
This game
copies,
may be
which
rejected by most of the Yoko Taro
pretty much
fans,
actually isn't
but
that
let me know
bad
what
given
you
the
think
small
of the
scale of
video.
these games.
If you enjoyed the
So this was
recap, leave a
recent
like,
because this
and
has the
thanks to
newer
the
credit
Patreon
style.
channel member pack members. Links are in the description for extra.
By the
perks
way,
and
if you
support the
are in
channel.
fact
Thanks for
a
watching, and
YouTube
see you
member,
in the
then
next
first of all,
video.
thank you very much. And second, if you ever notice that the scrolling credits are just inconsistent in terms of the font, the size, the speed, the coloration, it's because I have no idea what I'm doing still. I just take the presets, change a couple things, and I never save the presets to anything, so it's different every time. It's never consistent because I'm a complete amateur joke. Just in case you were wondering. Because sometimes you're like, wow, those scroll by pretty fast. I couldn't see my name. Yeah, it's probably whatever. I'm dumb. It comes to editing. So, Drakengard 2, uh, yeah, in the end, no one was free, and we followed the prophecy. Yeah, we just ended up doing the exact same thing over again. We just ended up going back to using the human seal. What's interesting, by the way, is if you read the short story, which I did because I wanted to see which ending I wanted to pick out of this and see which one it correlated the most to, which was this one. Mana doesn't end up with Noe. Noe actually, or she goes off to like a different country, doesn't have anything to do with him, and raises an orphanage by herself. And Noe goes and visits Eris, and she is almost about to die and tries to make it where they can see each other one last time, but we never see, of course, because that's how things are written. We don't know if they end up meeting. We don't know if they end up having any time together before she dies. We don't know what happens at the end of it. So nobody gets what they want. Noe saves nobody. He doesn't save Mana. He doesn't save Eris from a terrible fate. He loses his foster father. He loses the Order of Knights he originally wanted. He didn't free the world from anything. So even though people would say that this is arguably the happiest ending, maybe, but when you really think about it, there's still a bleak end for everybody involved. I would probably say Mana gets off the easiest. She kind of gets off scot-free in both games, even though she literally causes the ruination of the world in both games. So, I really like Drakengard 2 for that aspect. When we get to the characters, it's funny because this has both some of the best characters and worst characters, in my opinion, in terms of just like how they lay them out and how they use them. It's a down running with no satisfying payoff. Yeah, that much I can say. Because at least in Drakengard 1, everybody dies, potentially. At least that's a finality. At least you have that going for you. So at least that's closure. In this one, everybody has to live with the knowledge that they're complete failures, which is arguably more brutal. Like, Kaim and Angelus got off easy. They at least got to get a really cool death scene and a really cool final battle. But yeah, that's Drakengard 2. Drakengard 2, again, you really, because these are games that are quote unquote super old, um, you don't really hear too much talk about them. You only hear talk about them in like the circles of the Yoko Taro verse fans. And even then, I really do feel like a lot of them sleep on this because both story wise and gameplay wise, it's really not that much different from the other two. And in many aspects, it is better, as we will get to the discussion. But let's see Drakengard 3. Drakengard 3 is interesting because it is a PS3 game that plays like a PS1 game. Oh, my mistake. A PS2 game. Let's be fair. Drakengard is a PS2 game that plays like a PS1 game. For some reason, both of those games are so rough. Drakengard 3 drives like ass. It is a game that is hard to describe because you have to you have to literally have the controller in your hands to be playing it to understand how incredibly difficult, needlessly so, and bad it feels to play. It is poorly optimized. It chugs for no reason. Frame rate drops all the time. It is a poorly optimized game. And it's made late in the PS3. Nothing that late in the PS3 cycle, but it's made deep enough the PS3 cycle where like there's no excuse for this. This is just straight up bad. And I believe it was the 10th anniversary game too. It is a incredibly rough game, but also has its merits. But I am just gonna say, mechanically speaking, it's not good.
Released by Access Games in 2013 on the PlayStation 3, Drakengard 3 would be a
one's
celebration
really well.
of the 10th anniversary of the first game, but take place chronologically before
This
it.
first cutscene, by the way,
Directed and
obviously the
written by Yoko Taro
cutscene, like the
alongside
art
writer
team went to
Sawako
work.
Hattori
This
and
opening
producer
cutscene is
Takamasa
very, very
Shiba.
cool.
The game will be helmed by the same group who also created the original Drakengard and its spin-off sequel, Nier.
Because this was made by the same Kaguya team who made Drakengard 1 and Nier, which I think explains why all three of them have terrible combat. Because original Nier, by the way, is very slow and generic, I think is the most polite way I'll put it. Everybody here has highly pressurized anime blood that just spews off in a geyser when they're cut.
Each with their own combos and set of attacks, and weapons may be swapped on the fly. A meter may be built up to unleash a temporary mode of
This is like the sort of animation you would see at the beginning of a cell phone game, where like it looks very cool, very stylized, and the character art doesn't really look like the actual in-game art at all.
But this will be covering just the events of the
Look at all this Kool-Aid everywhere.
The story only gets
All this
larger
fruit
from here, so
punch.
let's cut it down to signs with a recapitation.
Nier was fine, Nier was not
As the game
fine.
begins, the world of Midgard,
Nier was
a disaster
barely
known as the
tolerable.
Cataclysm
I
occurs
mean,
in
I guess it was
856
okay,
AD
but it
in the
really was
Iberian
just not that
Peninsula,
great.
resulting in a huge city appearing out
It
of
just was a
nowhere and unleashing all manner of
generic
creatures
feeling
worldwide.
action game. It was really more
As we
about
jump forward
the
to
dodging
998
and the
AD, we hear of a world ravaged by
I liked
wolves
little
and
scenes
saved
like
by
this.
5 songstresses called
doing
Intoners,
this sort of
who would
animation
use their
filter on it
magical
rather than the
abilities to
stills.
restore
I think
peace
this was
and
cool.
harmony to the land and be worshipped by the people. The youngest of the Intoners,
Nier was fine
named Fran,
frame
was
rate
driven
wise.
by
Yeah,
desire
frame
for many
frame
things, such as
rate
wealth,
wise
food,
it
or
was.
pleasure, that her young
This, by the way,
companion
is
Dino
all the
was tired of.
DLC. All the
Speaking with no
DLC
filter,
features
the
each of the
disciple complains
sisters,
about her rampant lust and in the impracticality
and they
of being
all
scantily
basically
clad
precede the
while in
actual
combat.
game you play.
Keeping his comments about her depravity to himself, Tito secretly wishes nothing but misfortune to meet his intoner. On one outing, Five is on a quest to seek some legendarily delicious meat, and both show off their shared streaks of cruelty to others as they mercilessly
Most of
slaughter
it's
anyone
really
they
just
have. Dito
fan
comments
service
how
to
small
play
its
as each of the
objective seems
sisters.
against her sister
Like most of
Luana's
the
goal
actual
of
stuff you
building a
do in
new
it is
world
just
of
revisit
peace,
the
when
levels with
Five
very
replies, wanting
mundane
to indulge
goals.
in the pleasure of the new world is part
It
of
really
her
isn't
goal
that
too,
important. That's why we
so
kind of
it's
go
close
through it very
enough.
quickly because a lot of it doesn't
She adds
matter.
enjoying the gourmet cooking from her sister too, and after seeing
They
this
mostly like
quest
the
is a bust,
the beginning
seeks
and the
to
end
hunt the rumor
cutscenes
of a legendary
is just there.
mushroom
Some of them
next.
are more
This
interesting.
also leads
This
nowhere,
one for
but along the way they are joined by the sassy and outspoken purple dragon named Gabriella.
and
who
see
has
we
been
have
helping
a
Five's
purple
sister
dragon named
Luana, and
Gabriella
by
here.
extension
Where
the
does she
rest
come
of the
from?
sisters.
Who knows?
She's not enthused to be helping with Five's whimsical hedonism, as the Intoner falls in love with the land of the seas and decides to claim it for herself. As it so happens, her selfish quest for rare ingredients will be satisfied as well, taking down a colossal crab on the coast and enjoying it for dinner. Meanwhile, the Intoner 4,
I kinda feel like I've
alongside
seen
her
this
disciple
animation style
Decadus,
before.
continue their quest for world peace and happiness through the destruction of evil. She helps clear out the leftover troops of the evil.
Out of all of
overlord
them,
that
I
once
liked
ruled
Four's
Cathedral City per
brawler
one's
style. It
orders,
was the
though
most
she dislikes
satisfying.
meaningless violence and would
It just kind of
prefer
felt and
resolving
looked
things
good.
peacefully.
To me, like, it was the
Decadus,
most
however,
tolerable out
is
of all of
privately
them.
stimulated by suffering and pain, especially his own, but loyally supports Four in a respectful and capable manner. Strongly principled,
It was one of those
Four
where, like,
even
she felt the
refuses
most fun to
intimate
play.
relationships for herself and pauses to honor the
The
dude
whole
she
thing
killed,
here
and
is
she
once
soon
again
supported by Gabriella,
the common
who
theme
calls
is that
her
every
out on
character
hypocritical
person here
methods,
is a
empty
miserable
words,
person
and
you don't
naive
actually want
ideals.
to like.
Deploying next to the land
That's
of
everybody's
Forest to
got
clean up
issues.
troops
Everybody's
there,
a
Four finds she
freako or
also
in
has
some
to
way,
clear up the
and that's just
undead
kind of the point.
abominations left behind by her eccentric but magically gifted
It's just that
sister,
everybody
Three.
also is more
As a
centrally
dragon,
themed.
Gabriella can see the shape of a person's heart, and looking at Four, saw her.
Each of the 5 intoners, including Zero, and then each of their tuners are all they all represent something. They're all symbolic.
Complaining how everyone but herself is the problem.
The journals
As
between
she
each of
works
them
to
are
fill
actually
one's
kind
war
of
chest,
funny.
Gabriella continues to point out her passive means of padding her own ego with delusions. Four speaks of peace and dreams, but orders complete annihilation of all who oppose her, finding peace if all enemies are dead. She then takes to the skies on Gabriella to butcher those she deems air pirates and elves, showing no care or mercy even to those defenseless, surrendering, or fleeing. Gabriella is openly disgusted with Four's insane self-righteousness.
4 represents
calling it manslaughter,
Zero's pride of
but Four points
virginity.
out it cannot be
So
manslaughter when you
virginity
slaughter
I can
elves.
understand,
As the
but
burning
the
victims
pride thing,
rain down
yes
from the
and
sky,
no,
Four is
because I think
confident
pride
in
isn't the
being
good
the
the
right,
right word for
firmly
it.
believing they were
Just
justified in taking out
self-righteousness
bad
is
guys
because
who were not
yes,
human,
they're all
probably not
prideful.
civilians.
But
Next, we
Four
see
in
the
particular,
Intoner are seemingly
more than
overly
anybody
cynical,
else,
who is
believes she is
inquisitive by nature,
unquestionably,
working with dolls to an
irrefutably
excessive
correct.
degree.
Her sense of
disciple
justice is
Offset,
dominant
likewise
over
obsessed
it.
with his own personal passion for
Her
intimacy,
arrogance
and
is
quite proud of his
probably the
girth.
most deeply
She is
seated in
informed
all
that
of
some
them.
of the soldiers she conjured up for one have been acting out of line, and so she moves to dispose of them. While normally tired and disinterested, 3 becomes quite
3 was
lively and
probably
chatty
the
when talking about her
lamest one to
experiments
play
and
as.
lessons
I did
in
not
their
like
life.
playing as her.
She reveals she has modified and experimented on all manner of monsters for the sake of curious dissection to enhance bioweapons for military science. Octa brings up the strange text that appears before each round and mentions how he's noticed they don't do it as often as they used to. 3 replies she's grown bored of him, which wounds Octa's pride as she has moved on to betting with various men in her army. Taking on the larger experiments with Gabriella, the dragon has something curt to say about each of 3's efforts but gets bored quickly with 3's general apathy. For the longest time, the more 3 learned, the more questions she had, and the more frustration she built against one disposing much of her creative craftsmanship. However, as they clear out the reject and spare parts,
It was kind of
monsters,
weird that she has
3
like
reveals there are
swords,
so many
but she
because
doesn't
of the
really
scores
use
of
them.
humans and monsters she had to kill or had died for the sake of research. Octa
In
is shocked to
Drakengard
hear
3,
she
for
is
all the
now indulging
Drakengard
in
games,
human
you're gonna have
experimentation too.
well, swapped
Now that she
enemies.
crossed this line too, children and
2 I think
soldiers
had the
in her own
least
army
amount
were not
because 2
spared
had
for
a
the sake
lot
her
of good enemy
passion, which
variety
causes
for the
Octa to
models.
worry.
Then I would
Elsewhere,
say
we now see the
1, and I would
kind-hearted
argue
Turner, too, alongside
3
her
for some
disciple
reason
Sen, who are
has the
genuinely
least
in love
amount of
with each other.
variety in character
An upbeat
models.
and energetic couple, even in the thick of
You fight a
battle, they would
lot of
endlessly
the
flirt and
same
adore each
model
other.
dudes.
Per
Yes,
Wolf
some of them are
orders,
color
clearing the land
different
of
and
monsters
they
that
changed the
moved in
weapon type,
after
but
the
it's,
evil
you know, it's
overlord's
functionally
forces
basically a
had
palette
built out.
swap.
Compassionate
They
as
did
well,
not, in
2
my,
takes time to build
I can't
orphanages
really
for the
quantify
impoverished,
it because I would
and
have to
loves
literally
cook
go
those
into
around,
some sort
being
of
quite
bestiary
talented
guide
too.
and literally look up how
She
many
admits
different
she's
enemies
happy
there
to be
are
beside
and
her
how many
lover,
different
doing
skeletons
work
are
for
for
a
each
cause she
one,
believes in,
and then which
but
rigs are
reflects
the
she's
most
now
unique.
scared
I'm not
of
going to do that.
Dahl
I'm going
growing
based
too
on gut
well, and there is
instinct.
an air of
I
insecurity
think
without
3
it.
had the least amount of enemy
Eventually, she
variety.
finds she also must clear out human resistance as well, which doesn't sit well with her, and Scent reveals he doesn't love people so much as he loves when they can be of use to him, like when they are protecting her. He adds he firmly believes they are bound by destiny, and there is no instance they are not meant to be together. Soon they get a
3
letter from
represents
Decanus
Zero's
that something bad has
stolen
happened in
childhood, as
Cathedral
0 had a
City,
childhood
and 2 is
characteristic
worried
by
about
mother
the
since she
orphans she
sold
left
off.
behind there,
See, I feel
opting
like
to
that's
check on
going
them
into some of the
personally. She thinks to
outside
herself, there are
reference
so many
material
things to
because I don't
protect, but
believe
there
that
is
was
a limit
talked
to
about in
such
the game.
things, as they are alarmed to find the Cathedral City overrun by undead, and the standing soldiers
I wouldn't
enhanced by
say
her
that
song
she
have been turned into
represents
monsters. Blaming herself, her mind
a
begins
stolen
to cry that
childhood
she
at
is
all, to
forced
be honest
cut
with you.
down
I
her
really
own
don't,
men,
you don't get that
wrote by her
vibe.
own song, and she is horrified to find all of the children she tried to save have been fused into a giant
They really tried to
monstrous.
really rack up the
The
tragedy with
screams and
2
painful cries rattle
very
to her as she
quickly, just
mentally
trying to
snaps
like
while
quickly
murdering the
establish her as
children.
like the most
Though she
likable of all the
wins, two
sisters,
spirit
and then
breaks, though
throwing
Seth
everything
swears
she
to
cared
remain by her
about in the
side, they
trash.
still foolishly lean on love to repair themselves.
And then I do like the whole
Beyond
thing
that
where
is the
they
intoner
is trying to
leader,
basically go
respectful
where
and
it's like
strong
love
in
isn't going to
logic,
fix all your
yet is no
problems.
disciple of her own. To herself, she knew the intoners were a cursed kind ever since they began their effort to
2
save
represents
the world
Zero's
from
happiness and dreams
chaos.
of the future, a long touch of
She also
innocence. I can
explains
believe
every
that.
intoner needs a disciple to not only boost the power of their song, but also satisfy the core desires in each of them, both physically and spiritually. However, one simply
One
felt
also kinda
lonely,
sucked to
and so
play
her
as, not
brother
gonna
was brought
lie.
into the world to address this.
Like having a giant
On
chakram, that
August
wasn't
1st,
very, I
998
don't know, it just kind of
AD,
sucked.
She created him using one of her ribs. One explains they are one and the same.
Even
as he is
though the
actually a
chakram
copy of
weapons
her
for
and uses the
0
power
are
of a
easily like the
disciple,
best
though
ones.
is more than a normal disciple who is just a tool for battle.
Because that's literally what you
With
do is
this,
just kind of
she
like
gains a partner she
identify
can always
things.
trust and
1 is very
forgive,
strong
and
though,
could
but I
prepare
never found
her
like
for
her
what she
levels
was
to be that
about to do.
interesting. She was just there for
Brother
exposition.
One thinks to call her mother since she created him, but disliking the name, she insists on just Sister One. Together, they claim the cathedral handily, clearing out the resident forces, and begin enacting her plan of overthrowing the cruel lords of the land and saving the people suffering under them. She adds she has no desire to replace them as rulers, and is instead focused on the task of killing someone named Zero. One mulls over the dilemma of if killing is a sin, then what about killing to save the life of another? Brother One questions the same, wondering if killing evil makes them good or evil for the same action, but she has no
I like
answer
a lot
for
of the
that.
philosophy
He
here.
also questions
One's
why they must
one's
fight
biggest
in order to
enemy
make a peaceful
is
world, to which she
herself
is a little annoyed by, but admits it
more than
seems like a
everyone else.
contradiction that
Because
she
every
will
one of them
balance
ends up being
herself later.
self-ruinous, including 0.
She adds
Like
peace
she
to
is
be
literally
her
killing
fail-safe
herself.
and will be a secret from everyone,
But
including
1
the other
at least
sisters, as
like
they
identifies
succeed.
it that way.
The only other
I think is the
person
most
who would know is
self-aware out of
Gabriella,
all of
who wasn't
them.
impressed to see the new twin. Later, Brother One asks if all intoners have strong libidos, and One confirms they do, but clarifies she won't be using him to manage
1 represents
that.
0 sense of
Gabriella
justice,
jabs
kind
at
of,
One
and
for
desire to
simply
live
having a disciple
along
this way, and mocks how serious she is
stubbornness,
now, remembering how she used to laugh
and desire to
smile more
live
often.
along a stubbornness.
Still, Gabriella is glad to see she has
Not sure I'm
someone else to
understanding
lean
that.
on,
If you're saying
and when
that
clear, she
it's her
actually
desire
thinks
to
of Gabriella
live,
as
I
a
would
friend
disagree.
instead of a partner.
0 wants to die
To
the
help
most
her
out of
prepare
all of
for
them.
Zero, Gabriella tells her of the perfect spot to train, showing her a
The
space
whole
in the
reason
forest
Zero's
where
doing
one faces
all
off
of this
against
is so
the
she can
illusion of
actually
Zero,
die.
forged from her own thoughts. Working together, the twins defeat the Phantom Menace, though one is not sure it was much much practice against the real thing. Gabriella laughs it off, telling one to lighten up, and saying again, as a dragon, she's here because she wants to be. As the twins rest, Gabriella compliments one, thinking she'll be clever enough to uncover the mistake the world made.
I like how the dragon's like,
March
this
3rd,
one right here is the
999
smartest
AD,
one
her
who will
eldest
probably
sister
realize
Zero would
everything in
appear,
this world is a
declaring her intent
farce.
to kill them all.
I like that.
Alongside her white dragon partner Michael, Zero cuts a bloody path through soldiers that would label her a traitor.
And then we have the white dragon. Where did this white dragon come from? Who knows? Doesn't matter.
Michael fends them off and tells her to go on ahead, though her 5 sisters are already waiting for her. One is not amused at Zero's intention to rid the world of intoners, and while the sisters clash, one calls down her dragon Gabriel to end things. Zero notices
Gabriella
the
got
beast
turned
is
into
actually more
Gabriel.
human
How?
now, as she struggles to put
I
a
think that's
dent
actually
in it,
covering
and
outside
Michael
material. But
appears
for
to
now, who
shield the intoners formed
knows?
together. Quickly, Michael shields Zero from the
These
devastating
cutscenes do look
blast
very
from
cool, by the
Gabriel,
way.
as the duo is blown away, and one states they will now sing of the world's end.
That's actually
As
kind of a
year
throwaway
healing,
line.
waiting,
I
and
included it, but
preparing
in
passes,
in
Zero is still
reflection, I
haunted by
shouldn't
the
have
loss of
included that
Michael,
because that's a
and now
throwaway
deals with
line.
a prosthetic
It didn't mean
arm and
anything.
a strange flower growing out of her eye. She is also raising her new partner in Michael's reincarnation, a childish young dragon who still wets itself, Mikhail. Mikhail doesn't
Urination.
remember anything about his previous life, and Zero also refuses to use his real name until he proves himself as a dragon. Taking the first steps on her path of revenge now, Zero has Mikhail take out a nearby battleship while she handles the ground forces, though the naive dragon repeats the notion of simply resolving her dispute with her sisters with words. She rejects this, saying she intends to be the only intoner in the world, and this means the others must die. Setting upon the Shrine of Seas to attack 5 first, Zero comes across a weapon shop run by someone named Accord.
In this one,
Mikhail asks
you
about the
don't
youngest
switch
sister, and though
characters. You
Zero
can
gives a
have a
quick
character
description of an
with you who
nymphomaniac,
will like
Mikhail finds
follow
that
you and
pretty
fight
similar
with
to
you.
Zero herself.
And you do
Cutting
switch
down the
between the
guardian
different
Vegas and
weapons
sinking
and the
the
different weapon
battleship, the shrine
styles.
rises and
But
opens
this
up
is
as
one of those
Zero's
games
ready to
where
fight.
it kind of doesn't
One of the
matter
strongest dragons, Michael, dead.
because there are a
Five
couple of
doesn't consider
weapons
Zero
like
with
the
Mikhail
lance or
making
the
a threat.
chakram where
Five
they are
begins to
just
sing her song, and her
blatantly
disciple
better than
Dio
everything
summons
else.
her angel, Fanuel, to challenge them. Defeating
The
it, Zero
variety of the
brutally stabs Five
huge
repeatedly,
bosses
but the
in this
Intoner
game
shows
are
takes
very
more
good.
than that to kill her as she begins another song. Just then, Dido finishes what Zero started, cleaving Five in half, and merrily enjoys her death, laughing as he continues to mutilate her body. Taking on Dido as her own disciple,
The meta
Zero
humor,
heads straight to 4 next in the land of mountains.
I don't
taking
know.
on
It
Alpine
didn't really get a
Citadel.
giggle out of me.
As Dido helps her take down a Cerberus,
I
he asks about
sort of
Thor, only
appreciate
gets
its
back the
oddity
fact that
being
she's a
there,
virgin and toner.
but I was like, okay.
However, as a death
Yeah, I
blow,
felt like the
Final
scene
Severed
carried this up
Cerberus
well
head
enough where you
lunges
didn't
out
need
and
it.
rips out Zero's entire right side. As
It's very
dark
interesting
energy
how
seeps
one
out
and
of
brother
the
one look
severe
exactly
wound,
like
the
Man and
flower
Seer.
in her
Yep,
eyes suddenly
definitely by
grows
intention.
massive, and from within, Dido
This I
watches
thought
while
was
new
a
body
cool
for Zero
change right
regenerates out
here,
of the
where it's
void.
like
Later, she explains
she
a
lives
parasite
by
that
literally
attached
being
itself to her,
recreated
how she
over
controls
again
her
if
fake
she's
arm
given
as
the
well,
opportunity,
though doesn't
and that
regenerate it for
this
personal
flower is
reasons.
just not artistic.
Mikhail
It's literally
clumsily opens the way
parasite.
forward for them and helps lay waste to the fortress, though insists again Zero should not
Physical
fight her
humor.
family. Climbing the snow-capped peaks, Zero's
At the
outbursts
same
cause an
time,
avalanche that almost
right
spells
here,
game
the
over
amount of
as they take to the
jokes in
sky,
this
shooting down
game,
wyverns
the
and
amount of
closing in on
self-referential
fortification on their
humor,
own airship.
I
Arriving,
kind of am
well
okay
pleased
with
Zero
it.
not to fight,
They did
using
this a
her
lot,
song
by
to
the way, the
raise a
whole split
powerful
camera
shield,
scenes.
as her disciple Decadus summons her angel Armoros for
Hey, look,
additional
this game is
protection.
not afraid to show faces.
Hurling
Take that,
fire and
Drakengard one.
vulgarities to break down Four's defenses, Four tries to remind Zero of her old sweet and caring self, though Zero denies any of that is true as she's just
The
a
bosses
visual.
in this game are
As Zero
very
lands, her
good
head starts
for
to
the
ache as
dragon
she
ones.
resists a sudden personality shift into a kinder and gentler person with no recollection of her actions. Relieved, Four recognizes this aspect of her and hurries to embrace her. Zero asks about her other sisters and Four reveals where they are, only to be rewarded with impalement as Zero reveals she was just faking a split personality to get her to drop her guard. As Zero slashes down a defenseless Four, Decadus watches his
The
master
game's very
die
bloody,
and
but
begs
it's
for
not
death
very
as well,
gory,
but
believe
Zero
it or not.
replies she kills her sisters but takes their men. Adding the gentlemanly but masochistic Decadus as a disciple alongside the sadistic Dido, Zero now heads to the land of forests. Mikhail evolves into a more powerful form, and though Zero claims Four's airship for herself, it is quickly shot down by Three's forces. Mad at losing her new toy,
I have to
Zero
say, some of the
slaughters
jokes they
Three's
did
front
here,
lines
like,
as Undead join the opposition,
actually kind of
and
work.
Mikhail
They
is
play
strangely
on
moved to the
timing
crowd.
as well as
Encountering the fairy fountain, a cheeky
irony,
fairy
and I
reveals
kind of
that
like that
Mikhail has
because
disappeared to
it
and
goes with a
mocks them, but
dark
not for
comedy.
long.
I would have to say that
Trolls and
Drakengard
spirits
3 is a
controlling
dark
spirits of these
comedy.
woods take to
There is
constantly harassing
absolutely
her,
a
as one
lot
fairy
of
smugly teases that
tongue-in-cheek,
he would know where Three is hidden.
double
The Fairy
entendre,
King is in fact just as
puns,
arrogant
physical
and condescending
humor,
as Zero
timing,
expects,
which is really a formation of a lot of comedy.
To play the game
There's a lot of that that plays into the way that they are making fun of almost like a lot of RPG tropes like they did right here with the Fairy King, where they're not trying to make an academic point. They're literally just having fun with it and actively making fun with it. Drakengard 3 is actively laughing at both itself and you, quite frankly. And I kind of like that cheekiness.
Further in, doors locked by riddles bar their way, but Zero isn't having any of it.
They literally be like, what the hell is the point of these teleporting platforms and hitting sequences? Who would ever design a security system like this? Such bullshit. And it's a very meta, self-aware humor, but at the same time, I kind of appreciate it.
Forcing him to announce her song and Angel Armisail. Destroying her army of soldiers turned into doll-like weapons, Mikhail states seeing 3 is causing him to act strangely, and after the fight, voraciously devours her in a single bite. The group is surprised at his actions and sudden thrashing, but soon they are all blown away by a couple of angels alongside a disciple named Sent, who was sent by 2 to take away Mikhail. As they subdue her dragon
Sent who was sent.
Zero quickly chases Sent to the land of sands.
I thought that was clever at the time.
And
I look back right now where I think maybe did I even do that on purpose? I didn't catch that the golems here look like the other golems. I meant to make a note of it, and I didn't make a note of it. That's an error on my part.
As she writes off the
it's like, oh, I meant to make a note that the golems look like golems, but whatever. Doesn't matter. I guess it's just not going to be an Easter egg for people who care.
She notes how it no longer feels pain, and takes this as a sign of how she is losing her humanity, staying focused on her mission. Finding documents leading them to the Shrine of Sands, they cross a desert with magically amplified heat from the sun, and Zero faces down 2 and Sent. Zero sees the blank expression on 2 and knows her mind must be gone, explaining 2's body cannot handle the power of her song. Regardless, 2 and Sent work together to raise another song for her angel, the twins Egregori, and as Zero and Mikhail win in a 2v2 duel, one of the angels attempts a sneak attack as it falls. Mikhail quickly shields Zero.
A lot of lasers in this game, by the way. We shoot a lot of lasers.
Evolving him into his final form. He sends the energy back to finish off the angel and annihilates 2 in a single blast.
What I do like is that out of all the campaigns, this feels like the most self-satisfactory one on just one of its routes. What I like about Drakengard 3 is that unlike the previous ones, there aren't so much endings, so much as when you keep playing, you actually just keep playing to uncover more of the full story, something that they used later in Nier Automata, where, yes, you could beat the game and get quote-unquote ending A, but that's not even the halfway point of the entire game. You actually just have to keep playing.
Finding no need for them as tools.
It's better to say that that is perhaps the end of that chapter of that story. The dragon designs here look very good. I like it.
Cathedral gate, she orders Mikhail to intercept Gabriel and stay safe, and the uncommon words of trust and concern surprise him as he breaks off. Making her way inside, Zero turns to her disciples and tells them.
So one thing I kind of wish they did with Mikhail is I get that he is different from Michael, but I kind of wish that as he evolved his forms, his voice would become more like Michael's in that same stage of maturity. I think it's kind of weird that he sounds like a kid and all that. This part was actually a twist I didn't see coming. Like, oh, I didn't realize that she made all the disciples out of doves. Okay, didn't see that one coming.
And yet there is magic.
Genuinely didn't see that one coming.
The gap in knowledge makes no sense, especially since there is no record of the people who once possessed this knowledge, nor when or how they lost it. As such, she still wonders what the purpose of the Intoners is, and Zero replies there is no point in worrying because she is about to die. Unfazed, one summons Gabriel, who comes.
I like that too, where one just kind of questions, where it's like, man, our history really isn't adding up here. Have you ever noticed that? A lot of it seems very contrived. There's a lot of plot holes in the writing. Which again, I feel is very self-referential humor for the continuity of Drakengard / Nier. Like it's self-aware, it's commenting on its own timeline.
Zero parries Gabriel long enough to tell Mikhail to reincarnate and survive, even though that means he would lose his memories.
I was also explaining the novels that have been fun of hills in the game. Well, that's just it. Like I said, he purposely writes a lot of holes in the writing to just kind of fill in later as per convenience. I don't give a point for that. I don't think that's clever. I think it's amazing that he's allowed to get away with it because people enjoy the end product regardless, but I don't consider that very clever writing.
Disappearing in a flash of light, Mikhail's sacrifice blows away.
And the whole thing
Gabriel,
where
who's
dragons, when they
protection,
die, get a
as
wish.
Once back, she's also willing to sacrifice
Man, would have been
herself
nice
for the
to,
sake of
you know,
Gabriel.
to tell Angelus that, like, hey, Angelus, when you died, did you know you actually had a wish? And you could wish for pretty much almost anything? Wow. If only we had that plot convenience later. They must have forgotten it as history went on. I guess they just changed how dragons work.
Whose white clothes are now dyed red with her blood.
Again, reference to Drakengard where Mana is clothed in red. I thought that was a very nice touch to that. I didn't feel the need to call it out because if you know, you know.
Made of a dragon's fang, which can kill an intoner. He blames Zero for this outcome, and she spits back she always intended to kill all of the intoners, including
And she's like,
himself,
lol,
and
joke's
laughs
on
that
you.
he
I
just
was
did
actually
her
killing
a favor.
everyone. I was gonna kill myself. Thanks
As she
for doing me a
reaches towards
favor,
Mikhail,
sucker.
She gives a sincere thank you
Sucks
before
to
dying,
suck.
and Brother One now realizes he is lost in a world without the guidance of the intoners. After walking a bit, he realizes that if there are no intoners left to protect the world, that he'll just do it himself, calling himself the New One, and intent on creating a new religion worshipping him. As he leaves, several white doves fly down towards the bodies of Mikhail and Zero, and an observer named Accord walks in, commenting on the ending of his branch.
The whole concept of
noting it should
Accord,
take another
and then
branch
this being
before
sort
now.
of a
She elaborates, explaining that time
this
isn't
part
so
right
straightforward
here
to be
where
a
like you start
single
getting in,
one,
we're like,
as
oh, it
certain
turns out these
singularity
timelines are
rates
literally
can
just
cause
timelines,
divergence,
and
resulting
I'm
in a
literally
cyclical
struggling to
whole
keep track of
branch.
everything because this
As
leads
these
here,
multiple
then
worlds
goes over
exist, the
here,
court
then
chooses to
spins
look at
off
branch B,
here,
on
and it's all quiet.
April 1st,
By the way,
1080,
whoever thought it was a
28
smart
days
idea
after
to
Zero
put
began
bright
her
white
revenge quest
lettering
against
against a
him at
bright
Octa.
white background, F
In this
you,
branch,
that's
the
so
magical
dumb.
force they encountered would take on a different form, as noticed by
Worst
Octa, and they're
subtitling
joined by
backing I've
Sen,
ever
who has
seen.
no association with Two and is acting independently in his timeline. He's still arrogant, but is distracted by a nagging feeling about the name Two.
I like that
as the
each of
group
these
resumes
play
their
with
hunt for three.
genuinely interesting
Ego
what if
believes the mysterious
scenarios.
fog of the forest feels like a poison,
Like,
and
what
Sen observes
if,
there are no fairies
you
there
know,
anymore.
we got the
With
disciples
Momentum
early?
3 out
What
here, he
if
confirms there is
one
something wrong
succeeded?
with the
What
forest,
if
and the
three's
reason is a
experiments
secret of their
actually
sister One,
retroactively
deeper
could
ahead,
kill
read
dragons
yourself.
early? What if we didn't
Octa
have
says one is supposed to be the
Mikhail
future
going
city,
into the
so
final
it'd be
battle? Like,
weird
these
to
were
put Mikhail's
genuinely
words right
interesting
now.
scenarios
Just then, a
that
trio
I
of
enjoy the way they
Titans
played
ambush
with the
and
alternate
strike down Zero
timelines
devastating
of this.
power. As
Especially
Brother
since,
wounded, she
again,
gets away, begins to
these are
regenerate
just
her
different
flower,
choices, different
rising up once
branches,
again.
as they say.
However, the pressure of the
And
Titans
each
keeps
of them
up
lead to
and pulls her
conclusions.
right
Her getting
ahead against
bodied
the
like that to
tree
me was just
and stops
hilarious.
Zero's
It's like,
heart
I'm gonna
as Mikhail
regenerate.
rushes in to
Bam!
save
Pinned
her.
against the wall through the head.
Proving himself,
Savage.
Mikhail wins the fight and frees the intoner as she completes yet another regeneration. Further in, they find Three staggering towards them as she collapses, dying. She tells Zero she invited one into the woods with the intent to kill her, but warns her she miscalculated and paid for it. Zero is confused at this turn of events, as beyond she finds one dead.
It kind of actually is the same sort of fascinating part where, like with Chrono Trigger, where it's like, what if these what if scenarios of what if you beat this person here, what if you didn't save this person here, what if you altered the timeline back here, how does it change this other timeline or storyline over here? That sort of fascinating thing, I see echoes of it here, and it's like, nice.
As Octa holds back Scent but falls to his critical strike. Zero would finish off Scent, and as the two lovers
I like how
fall to
everyone's
each
just
other,
mass
they're
killing
happy
each
to be
other.
together again,
I also
and
like that
fight
intoners
as
are
they
not
use
just
the last of their
infallible or
power to
invincible,
summon
like
her
they're
other
powerful
angel,
with their
Raphael,
songs,
to kill
but
Zero and Mikhail.
it's great
As
that
they fight, the
they can just
spiders'
fall to
potent
just
poison
about
affects them
anybody.
both. As though they win, Mikhail is taken in.
I don't know why, but I get
and
Monster Hunter
poison
vibes from a
dies
lot of these
before
big
he can make
giant
his wish to
bosses.
reincarnate. Zero recovers thanks to her flower, but cries out in mourning at the
Dies,
death of her
doesn't get a
partner.
wish.
Choosing to invoke her in
Do not
song,
pass
she
go, do not
exchanges
collect
her own life
$200.
for Mikhail, thanking him for the friendship, and the next thing he knows, Mikhail wakes up alive with a flower in his right eye. As he leaves to live his own life, Accord comments Zero has used the reprogramming function of the flower to create a new concept known as the Pact, which she is unsure of the long-term consequences of.
And the whole thing here of like the
looks to April
reprogramming
13th
nature of the
at another
flower, it kind of
divergence
leads into what
singularity named
Drakengard
Branch
2 would later be
Mikhail
talking
was
about,
captured
where
by Two
these things that we
instead of
assume are gods or
Zero and
curses
Super
or,
alongside
you know,
Sen.
magic
They cross a
are
moon
actually
desert this
just
time. They're still
greater
magically cursed
beings
to sap their
creating
strength.
crap for us dumb
In this
humans,
instance,
and we don't
Sen
even
claims to
realize we're
have
just a
left
pawn
Two
in a
for
bigger
his own
game.
reasons, and Octa suspects
Because
he
don't
has
forget,
cursed Mikhail into
according to
de-evolving.
Drakengard
From
2
a distance,
later,
Accord knows
all
for sure that
dragons
dragon
are
devolving
fully
and
aware
disciples
of
abandon
A,
their
their
intoners,
grand
but
mission
very
and fight
curious
against
events and
the
decides to keep a close eye on
the
them,
gods,
and
and B, the
suspecting
fact that
distressing
humans
behaviors
are
could lead to a collapse.
like just
As
created
the
by
group
them
makes it
to
to
serve
Once
them.
Cathedral,
So it's very
soldiers are
interesting
seen
to see
being
that
an
because
unusual
according to
pitiful
2's
sleeper,
continuity,
as Zero spots Two
Mikhail
when she lit the
slash
first
Michael
dragon.
would already
As
know
Two
all
says
this
Zero
because
must
according
die,
to that
Zero knows
game,
she has already been
all the
consumed by
dragons
song,
always, like in their
begins to
blood,
feel
they
regret for
have
leaving
all
her.
of their legacy and their
Defeating her,
history.
Dita
Every
lands
one of
the
them
first
knows their
killing blow,
history.
followed by Octa and Decadus.
It's just this carried
Sen
genetically. They had a
feels he
term
must
for it, I
put
don't
her out of
remember
her
it.
misery and stabs her in the head, though a strange power now comes out that even he does not recognize. Zero senses a trap as two self-destructs, taking out all of the disciples with her, yet this does not lift Mikhail's curse. Focused on killing all intoners and ending all songs, Zero confronts one on her throne, who agrees with Zero's idea that intoners are a blight on the world and must be removed if it is to heal again. She also guesses her intent to kill her and then herself using Mikhail.
Besides, let's be real, intoners aren't exactly
One
human.
actually agrees with her that the
They're
world
obviously
has no
something
need for
more.
intoners, and further adds she knows the flower in Zero's eye is actually the one behind all of this. She suspects it will not let her die until it succeeds in destroying the world, and while both sisters agree they need to die, neither trusts the other to go through with killing themselves. Attacking Zero with another angel named Abdiel, when Zero defeats it, she uses Abdiel to summon Gabriel, telling Zero she is also aware of the power of the
And the
dragon
golems
and
of
can
Abdiel
only
right there look a
her.
lot like the
Mikhail is ready to
golem
counter
golems.
Gabriel's beam, and though he actually wins the clash of beams, destroying Gabriel, Mikhail is fatally wounded in the attempt and quickly dies as well.
Straight up
With both
murdered.
of their dragons gone, Zero and One clash. As One spits at Zero, this is what she gets for thinking she can do everything herself, from creating her sisters and then killing them, and then cursing the world and now wanting to save it.
But one of the things that I
Zero
like
loses
in this
and
is
One
that one
falls,
thing that
laughing
is
how Zero is
consistent
now
with
alone with no dragon
Drakengard
left strong
2
enough to
is
kill
that
her.
dragons
Zero
are
staggers
fighting
past the corpse of Mikhail while vomiting,
goddesses in this
trying to
case,
convince
because the
herself she
intoners
can't
are
find
revered
the
and
dragon.
referred to as goddesses, and quite frankly,
Accord
given
then
their
checks her
abilities
records, almost
and
getting
what
lost
they
on
could
how
do,
many
and especially their
timelines
final
there are,
form,
remembering
they
what
are
needs to
gods,
wear, and
goddesses.
noting it can all be
So it
pretty
makes sense that
confusing.
dragons A can
Double-checking
kill
to make
them,
sure she didn't
and
lose
B
recording, she starts
are
with
the
branch
main
A
weapon
on
used in their
April 20th,
destruction.
when Zero takes the group
That at least
back
is
to where it
consistent.
sees in order to check on
This
the
just
city
happens to be a case of
college.
where a goddess is
It is no more
willingly
peaceful, as
allying
lumbering soldiers
with
and
a
monsters still
dragon
wander
for the
around the
purpose of
area,
killing her. And really,
destabilized
like when we
farming
go back
by
into the
its
history of how she met
Arriving
Michael,
home,
like
Zero
that
speaks
is
for
what they
herself and
agreed on
records
is,
records of
hey,
branches and
you
other
know,
worlds
you're
as
gonna
true,
kill the
but
flower, which
maybe
for all we know is
the
basically a
flower
different
never
god.
appears. Though she reflects she may also be the singularity Accord was mentioning, meaning she could be the one bringing the world to ruin and thinks to ask.
I like how Accord comes in and
personally.
says every single
Down
timeline you
here,
try to
Accord
change
appears
things Zero,
behind
you
her,
fuck it
warning
up and
her that where
lose.
things stand
Just
right
want to point
now,
it out to
every
you.
branch Zero chooses
I've
will
seen
end in disaster.
millions of
Zero
timelines and you
questions
F
Accord's
up every
mysterious
single
ability to see
one.
the future,
How does that feel?
learning
How does
that
it feel to be
Accord's
such
actually the one making it in the first
a
place.
loser across
Accord
time
blasts off that
space?
accusation and Zero shrugs, but then quickly attempts a sneak attack, which Accord easily shrugs off as she leaves, almost as if she knew it was coming. Accord then checks Branch B for any lost recordings, aware of how keeping track of all of this is a chore sometimes. Going to April 14th now, where
I
Zero
like that
was
this is
pursued
just
through
the
forest
accounting.
until Seth
This is somebody
Dawson
just trying to
reported
file
information
paperwork
that
on
detailed him
timelines.
to
This
the
is
silly
looking
heaps
at
of land of
a
mountains.
fourth and
Now
fifth
hunting the
dimensional
world's most
clerk.
delicious fruit, called a Mendesian, they learn the hard lesson of chasing hyped up rumors in earnest results in all the more.
This again is where the
disappointing
game
for
is
them.
laughing at you as a player.
Accord steps in to
That's the
offer
only
good
reason why I
tidings
put
as
it in
well,
here in the
based on
recap. I
Bill,
otherwise would have cut it out.
fruitlessly, Zero tries to snatch
Do
them
you
both
think we
from
have
him,
enough
but still takes the
saturation?
opportunity to
Is there
gather
enough
more
saturation in this
research
scene?
data on Zero.
Also research.
She mentions while she's not supposed to interfere with the world she's observing, she doesn't find any harm in giving.
We need
her
some
a bit
color
of advice
balancing
now
in this
and then.
game.
Zero questions what she is, and Accord replies she is one of many recorders, assigned to chronicle world events across time and sent by people from the old
The whole
world.
idea of
She then
a
mentions to
time
the side
recorder
she's tired
is
of seeing
weird to
all the
me,
bad endings Zero
because
keeps
what's the point of
encountering,
recording
and is
every
going to
single
hell.
possible branch of every
Later,
single
Accord finds Zero
possible
still dreaming
timeline?
about her
Like, what's the
glory days
point?
with Michael, and when she wakes up, suggests dropping the
And then when you have
intolerance,
to
as
prune
Zero
certain
keeps causing
timelines, like why do you
singularity
choose
effects,
which
at
ones
some
do or do
point they'll
not?
be forced to neutralize her. A singularity is only counted as such if it causes a branch to occur, and after events on April
See, I like how
16th,
that little bit of
Accord finds
lore was
conditions have been
only
met for
in a
branch D to
loading
occur.
screen
Knowing how a
paragraph.
single decision can change everything,
Quote,
Accord
unquote,
observes
in the
March
game.
19th, where all the disciples have left their intoners, 2 and 5 are dead, and Zero is now hunting 4 in her mountain fortress. Zero tells
Again, I like the
Mikhail it's
setup of the
fine he
different
feels
what-if
urges
scenarios.
to eat intoners, as it's only natural, and Octa notes the magical power in Zero's flower is growing stronger, finding it awfully suspicious. Finally facing
To find the
four,
timelines, I
Four
need to get
announces
pruned because
she
it diverged too
realized the
greatly.
best
I
way
don't
to
know about
remove
that
their
because
fear of
according to
world is
Accord,
by
the ones
destroying
Zero is
them,
involved
and
with
Zero
all
realized the
collapse
power has
anyway.
taken her over to the point of no return. Four calls down the angel Zophiel, a demon dragon of her own, and sets upon Zero, though they are still no match for her. She finishes off Four and tells Mikhail to eat her now, and after doing so, the dragon evolves into a more powerful form immediately. There is actually so much power gained that he transforms again into his final form too. And
He's
with this
evolved
anomaly,
twice.
Zero feels they are now ready.
He's warp digivolving.
On March 31st, Accord visits the group and explains to them dragons
Look
have
how
a primal
massive his
instinct
tail
to eat
axe is.
intoners, and the branch
I
they
kind
are
of like
now
it because that
totally
really
damaged
is too
with all
scale
sorts
to
of
how it
chaotic
is
elements.
in battle.
Pursuing 3 now,
It's just
they head to the
absurdly
forest a few
large.
days later, only to be met by a resurrected and zombified 5, who wastes no time in summoning an angel, Galgaleo. Dito is overjoyed to see such an insane 5 in such an insane world.
Zero
willing to
is a
betray
singularity
Zero if they
in
are
of itself.
informed
Yeah,
his
yeah, that's
idea
exactly the
will
point, is a
improve
Zero
the
is a
intoners.
singularity.
He summons Fanuel to aid 5 and Scent quickly summons Egregori to counter. As they fight, 5 ravenously consumes the flesh of the fallen while expressing her pain, and Zero assumes the flower must have forced 5 back to life.
This is that what if scenario where people were fighting zombies.
To kill her once again
I kind of
good,
appreciate
and looks
that.
towards Sen and Dito, who begin to dissolve. She tells them they made the mistake of summoning an angel without an intoner, and so must pay the price themselves. Dito begs to stay alive in the one version of the world he can be happy in, but turns back into a dove, as Scent reveals he did not know about this cost, but is fine with it, as he didn't want to live in any world without 2 anyway. Time passes and it's April 14th as Octa learns from
One thing I
Zero
do
that
like is
Cycle
that
prepared
each
for
of the
certain
disciples,
toners on purpose, reveals
very
that it
distinct
is in the nature of the
personalities,
dragon to
very
consume the
distinct
flower.
designs that I feel
He
as a
wants Mikhail
supporting
struggling to
cast,
hold back
probably
his
the most
appetite
well
these
done.
days. Zero affirms when the time is right, she'll feed herself to him too. She tells both Decadus
I
and
also
Octa
appreciate that
opportunities
they're
for improvement
flawed
during nighttime activities,
and also
continues to search for
selfish.
both 1 and 3.
And yet somehow I can
Mikhail
almost
senses the
find
song's
myself
power in the
liking
skies
some
and
of them.
discover 3 summoning her own
Not for the
dragon,
reasons why
Ezreal,
they are,
which
but
Mikhail has trouble
I'm like,
matching
okay, I'm
speed.
okay with them as a
Decadus
character.
enters a scene to say he can summon
Because
his angel
they
to slow the
do
movements
more
of
than
Three's
just be
dragon
defined
whenever
by
they
their
fight it, or to
weird,
sacrifice his
you
form
know,
for Zero.
perversion.
Three
They're
brags
better
with the
than
flowers
just
force
that. They're
enabling
more
her
than
to
just
summon
that.
his dragon on her
They
own,
do more
but
than
thanks
just
to
that.
Decadus' efforts, Mikhail is able to land a finishing blow just before Ezreal can, destroying both it and 3 at the same time.
As I'm looking
Afterwards,
through these,
Octa asks
the
directly
flying
about Zero's
battles in
flower, and
Drakengard
Zero
3 are
decides
also
to talk,
really
saying
good.
it all started 2 years ago. In 998 AD, the first
The
time
bosses
she
are
saw
definitely
flowers
better,
when she died,
I would say, in
and
this one
since
for
then,
sure.
Its magic has kept her alive. As a walking corpse, the flower is the only thing keeping her moving, but it is also a calamity that threatens this world.
It's like,
It is
yeah, I'm an
growing and
asshole,
growing,
but I'm
and she
also,
knows one
you know,
day
like,
it will consume her entirely and
my
destroy
kind
the
of
world
asshole,
from
you
there.
know? It's kind of weird.
When she first realized this, she did try re-killing herself by removing the parasitic flower.
I also
by
think
force,
it's good
but
that they
it
didn't just
work.
kind of
In
overhammer it
response, the
home.
flower panicked and
They
made
didn't
Zero produce
overhammer their
5
character
little
flaw
girls,
to every
each
bit of the
a varying
conversation.
copy
Like,
of
yeah,
her,
sure,
which ended
Octa
up
would make
being
dirty
her
jokes
sisters.
nonstop,
None of
but
them are
other than being
technically
horny
alive,
literally
each
all the
rang off with a
time,
piece of the flower's
like, he was
magic
still
and her
smart, useful,
personality.
insightful,
She
and
finds the
showed
great
value.
irony in the eldest
He
corpse
had
trying to kill
strength. He
five
had,
younger
he, you know,
corpse
he was a
sisters,
clever guy.
and
He
later
would
the
say
corpse
smart
sisters,
things.
originating
He
from
wasn't
a
just
flower
lol,
meant to
I'm a
end
dirty old
war,
man.
would fight for
Who
world
actually wasn't
peace.
even old.
Regardless,
He just
she
literally
decided to
wanked
kill her
off so
copies
much he
first,
aged
and then
himself.
the flower, ending what she began. For this, she learned the only way to make sure they stayed dead and defeat the flower's magic was by means of a dragon or a weapon made from a dragon. Rewinding back to March 11th, she began to seek a dragon strong enough to kill every intoner. As she also sought out
And see,
information
right
on her
here,
five sisters,
that's where they
she happened
reference
to
it,
encounter
even
a
though we
dragon
really don't talk
flying
about
by
it
a
now.
man of seas named Michael,
In this
who didn't
world, there's
appreciate the
multiple
local army
dragons. She
firing
even
from
says so
far
right there,
by,
like, I need to
and
find
refused
a
to
dragon
call.
that's capable of
He
killing the
punished them for
flower.
daring
That's
to
my
borrow her
journey.
dragon,
And even
including Zero
when
for the
Michael's there,
audacity of
Michael
trying to order him
goes to
around
like
when
that
she was
tower where
convinced
it's
of
like,
his
hey,
power.
all of us dragons know
Michael
about this
boasts to
tower.
himself the
There's
strongest
other
dragon
dragons, they
around,
just don't
and
show
noticed
us
the
other
flower growing
dragons.
in her, pausing to ask
There's
her
actually a
about it.
bunch of dragons around.
Hearing her story, Michael, knowing the long history between the dragons and the flower, chose to
I also
help
like
her.
how dragons hate
The
wyverns.
relationship started rocky as
They think of
Michael
them
did
as
not
like
really care for
inferior.
Zero's
They're like
attitude,
subtly
as Zero
racist
wasn't a
against
fan
them.
of his
Also,
kind
shooting
either.
cubes.
Michael
Something we
explained
do in
dragons
all
have been
3
a natural
games is
enemy of the
shooting
flower
cubes
for
in the sky.
centuries,
That is
being
never
the only one
interesting.
capable of destroying it. She then told him the flower had become her sisters and all of them needed to be destroyed. Michael accepted the deal that once the sisters were dead, he would kill Zero last, but wanted to verify something first. The dragon, knowing what millennia of loss felt like, once took her to a mountain sacred to dragons where he was supposed to kill her. However, he wasn't so quick to believe every tale he was told growing up either, but wanted to test the strength of Zero first.
It's interesting to me that the
If she
dragons
did
have
not
a
the strength to
designated
suppress the
spot
first long enough
to
finish
kill
mission,
the
then he
flower.
would just kill her here. During this, Zero
Like, they've been
observed
fighting this
Michael
flower
wasn't
so
like other
long, they
dragons who
literally
were
have
proud
a
of avoiding
pre-made
interaction
spot
with humans,
for
and
killing
so
it and
decided to
disposing
take
it.
advantage of that to accomplish her own goals. 2 months would pass before she proved her strength and worth to Michael, and from this, a mutual respect and appreciation grew between the two. In fact, the night before they dueled to gauge her strength, Michael had a dream about an
This is
adventurous
another one
boy
where
named
once
Bill,
again we
and
have
was
some
fearful again
other
of the
lore that
loss.
I think they detail the
Afterwards,
story
Zero also spoke
in a
to
short
Accord,
story
informed
elsewhere.
her about her
I
sisters
think.
and how much time she had left, warning her again that if she fails to seal the flower, they will prune this timeline.
Okay, yeah,
Back
so
to the
she says it
present,
right
as
there.
April 22nd
If
comes around,
yeah,
Zero
she
arrives
does.
at the
This is
cathedral
about
soon, where
pre-tuning, so
Gabriel
Accord is there
immediately
to
attacks
measure
him,
if they're going to
Zero
prune the
announces
timeline or
himself,
not.
albeit unsuccessful.
Okay, answer my own
After
question.
crashing, Mikhail manages to win the dogfight and down.
This is the reason why I also
forcing
need a
one to the
recap and a
ground where Zero
reminder.
waits. Accord observes their duel, noting how at first
Yeah, see, the
five
spear
sisters
is
were just
too
corpses
good in
created
this
from
game.
Zero's
It
body,
just does
but
almost
soon gained
everything
self-awareness and
super
free
well.
will. She adds that some observers feel this timeline is doomed soon, but Accord believes this may be the one to finally rid the world of the flower. During the match, 1 locks down 0 with powerful magic, and to cancel it out, Octa chooses to sacrifice himself as well to use the Angel's magic and lock down 1 as well. He loses his human form just as 0 breaks free of the trap, but even then, 0 struggles to break down 1's barrier. Choosing to intervene, Accord dashes in, breaking 1's barrier and pinning her down while calling in an
Pulls out a
override spell.
satellite phone.
1 tries
An old
to raise her
80s
barrier
satellite
again,
phone.
Accord tells 0 1's shield will be down for half a second and mentions if she misses that window, 0 will die and this branch will terminate. While holding down 1, 0 makes the single strike just in time, running Accord through while successfully killing 1. As 1 explodes from her defeat, Gabriel disappears as well, and 0 sees Accord is really an android underneath. 0 jabs that she thought observers couldn't interfere, and Accord admits this action seemed a bit more human.
I like how we have observers and
asking
watchers.
0 to put her out of her misery as well,
And they are
0
different.
accepts, sending her greetings to the
And they never
old
talk
world
about
as she
this
takes Accord
old
offline.
world that is
As
also
Mikhail
observing
approaches,
all of
0
time.
tells him once the flower is in full bloom, it's up to him to destroy it. Solemnly he agrees, and as 0 absorbs 1's power back into herself, she tells Mikhail he's grown strong and uses his name respectfully. With this,
Which
a
rhythm
massive
fight is
flower
harder?
blooms atop
D1
the
or
ruined
D3?
cathedral city, as a form resembling 0 emerges and begins singing her final song. Matching beats to the ruinous rhythm, Mikhail stays aloft as all 5
You can
sisters
cheese
join
1
the
a
requiem.
lot more than 3,
Saying his
and
goodbyes,
3
Mikhail thanks
does
0 for all the
cheekier
fun times,
things,
and
like
the mighty
3
blast
will
destroys
move
the
you
flowers
off
in
the
form.
screen, and you still have to enter the
As the game
sequence,
ends, another
just to test
observation
if you have the
begins by
timing
Accord,
down.
recording that the intoners have been sealed
There are
off in
more
another
breaks in
world,
3
and
than
as such,
1,
the flower
but
is no longer a
I think
threat to
because of the
branch.
cheese, 1 is
She notes it may
easier
become
than
unsealed at some
3.
point in the future, and so will continue observing.
Though
but
I think
adds
if you
an
do them
addendum that
legit,
despite her role as a recorder,
I would
it feels
argue
as
1
Zero
is
still
simpler than
alive
3.
somewhere, and they will one day see each other again. As 4 doves land near Zero's blade briefly before leaving,
They're both
another
pains in
Accord
the
model
ass
comes
either
out to
way.
retrieve the luggage of the fallen model, thanking it for a job well done. More Accord models now emerge from the wreckage around the city and prepare to get to work recording everything. Before that, they turn to salute the service.
You
of the
know
one
Square
recorder
probably
that saved
sold
this
that exact
branch, and
luggage
thank
for
the
like
player personally
$3,000,
for their
right?
contributions as well, hoping to see you again someday too.
And again, addressing
Drakengard 3 has enjoyed the
the
success of
audience.
selling over 320
Sometimes I
thousand
don't like
copies
that.
worldwide.
I'm okay with Drakengard 3 doing that. Okay, when did this one come out? See what I'm talking about with the scrolling things? I have no idea what I'm doing. That's why they're never consistent. This was also the previous one. So this one also I did out last year. And this one came out 2013. So yeah, 2013, super late in the PS3 era. The PlayStation 4 came out at the end of 2013. And that's when this game came out. And it plays like garbage for a lot of it. The smoothest parts is the dragon fight, which is good because I feel like they put all their effort into it to making it good. Alright, so that's the watch along portion of it. We now have seen Drakengard's 1, 2, and 3. As we get started into the comparison part, where we're just going to start, comparing literally each one to each other and really start deciding which ones just wore it best. I'm glad that we have so many people here in chat that are enthusiastic about it, because I really hope that you can put some input into comparing them. And maybe we'll agree and maybe we won't agree. We'll see. But we are going to, of course, total them up and see which of these stories end up being better. And nothing is spared. We do not value nostalgia here. I warn all of you. Remember, last week we just cut Chrono Trigger down to shreds. The beloved, untouchable Chrono Trigger. Nothing's safe here. F your nostalgia. F my nostalgia. It's not about what we like. We are going to be academic about this, and we're simply going to do it. Like, what we like is going to be factored in at the very, very end. But we need to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples in as objective a lens as possible. Who did it better? And we are going to probably compare it on the pillars of story, characters, ground combat, air combat, and then world/level design, which are 5 things that all 3 games very prominently put as a strength. Like, they put effort into this story, they put effort into these characters, they put effort into the different types of ground and air combat. They design a world, more or less, and more importantly, there are levels that we can actually measure and critique. I feel like those are the five strongest things that this series, iconically, identifiably, are Drakengard. Franz, you're out. Enjoy. Aw, come on. You don't want to stick around for the fun part? You don't want to put your feelings on the line and have us trample all over in a public setting? You don't want to have us factually and remorselessly scrutinize things that may be near and dear to your heart? Come on. Where's the fun in that? I'm just messing with you. You gotta go. You gotta go. I get it. Thanks for hanging out. Before that, though, I'm going to make sure to refill my water. I'm running empty. And we will be right back. Everyone, make sure to stay hydrated. Okay, and we're back. It sucks that when you transition scenes, it looks like it eliminates it from the chat log. But thank you, Elfina. So here's where things get interesting now. This is where we start putting on our thinking caps. Do we want to put on some Drakengard music in the background? That might be kind of nice. Let me pull up a playlist. There may or may not be YouTube ads that interrupt this. I apologize. I feel like we should have the music of the series in the background. Let's see if we can get the best of Drakengard music. Somebody has a playlist for that. You know somebody's got to, right? Drakengard did have some good music, by the way. I don't want top ranked Drakengard music. I don't care about your list. Let's go with the Drakengard 3 soundtrack. I like Drakengard 3 soundtrack personally. I'm not cool. I don't have YouTube Premium. I have ads. There we go. We got some. Hopefully, it's not too loud. I'll lower it like this. Okay. So, oops, wrong site. Oh, interesting. It shows you that window. I'm on the wrong window. I want this window. There we go. Okay. This is a funny one. This is literally Drakengard Nier series tier list, and it's literally just like this. We'll probably reuse this when I do recap Nier Replicant, which I feel is kind of dumb because Nier Replicant is 95% Nier Gestalt. They added more content, so really there's no point comparing them. Obviously, you're gonna give it to Replicant, other than just pure preference of whether you like Brother Nier versus Papa Nier. I don't know. Seems dumb to me, in my opinion. But either way, these at least are the three we can do, and these are the categories as we decided it. It's gonna be interesting. I think we'll just have to discuss one, set it as a bar, and just kind of go up or down from there on 2 or 3. I think that's the most fair way of doing it. This is still an evolving process. Alright. The story of Drakengard 1. I feel like story is like the biggest pill to swallow versus all of these. Because where are we really going with these? In Drakengard 1, Kai meets a red dragon, makes a pact, fights an empire. It turns out that escalates into a fight against some gods. And then either straight up gets transported into the future or fends them off. The dragon chooses to become the next seal to protect the world from the gods, more or less. That's pretty much in a nutshell Drakengard. Along the way, he meets a quirky band of characters that follow him, but not necessarily. They're united, like they're not friends. They're not even on the same side per se. They just happen to be going in the same direction. think other than Vertile, none of them really even care about saving the world. Maybe Seri. Seri technically does. But Leonard and Ariosh definitely don't. Alright. The core premise of Drakengard is that the theming of Drakengard is going to be one where, again, I feel this story is trying to just have a very bleak, grim, dark look on the traditional JRPG action game. They set up very much early on that Kaim is a remorseless, ravenous, murder-hungry psycho. He doesn't care about anybody. Killing is what he likes doing, and it's what he does best. Eventually he grows to care about the Red Dragon, but even the whole motivation of fighting the Watchers, of fighting the Empire, even rescuing his sister, who loves him a little too much, that's just pretenses to kill things. He just will go with the avenue that allows him to kill the most amount of things. He's not a character you're supposed to like. He does have some redemption, I guess you could say, because he does choose to sacrifice himself. He does place the needs of others before himself in the very end, even reluctantly. Is the story really that much that's fascinating? I would say it's more the theming that contextualizes the story. In this story, we don't exactly examine the characters that much. We don't really see a growing development relationship between Kaim and the Red Dragon. We see talk and banter. We do get banter as we're fighting things. But actual meaningful interaction, conversations, that's few and far between. Even the development that we get for the supporting cast of the characters in this world for the world building, those are completely optional. You can go through, if you just go through the main story of this game, you do not get any of the side characters, like development, any of their story, plot, what's driving them, what's going on with them. You just get how they're introduced, and that's it. They become part of your party to fight with, and towards the end where they die. In this game, the overt story is absolutely a misdirect. You think it's all about Dynasty Warriors, you're a resistance kingdom fighting against a big empire that ends up being under the control of some mean-spirited god. Yes, that's the journey you take. But really, that almost seems to take a back seat to just feeding Kaim's bloodthirst. That really does seem to be like the whole thing, is that this entire journey is just to feed Kaim's bloodthirst. All of it seems secondary. Maybe I'm over-magnifying that. What do you guys think? I will say this though, Kaim is absolutely the protagonist of the story. Kaim does what Kaim feels like doing, which is usually killing things. Even his interaction with some of the supporting cast is all about like, I'm just gonna do this just so I can murder more things. Do we like this story? Is this a story that we feel is well told? It's a simple story, there's not much to tell. The relationship of the kingdom and the empire isn't really focused on. The fall of Kaim's kingdom isn't really the focus of it. It kind of just progresses from that premise into the overall, hey, this is actually a bigger plot of the gods trying to break out into your world. And you quote-unquote save the world by losing the thing that you care about the most. What is the message here? Without overanalyzing it. Because I know there are plenty of story analysis videos for Drakengard and blah blah blah. I don't watch any of them. My opinion, I think it's sometimes thinking a little too deep, reading a little too much into it. Sometimes things really are as simple as they're presented. It's really not a case of this subversive, that's the word I was looking for, subversive. The game tries to be more subversive. It's not a deconstruction, it's trying to be more subversive. But sometimes it really is just that. Is this a game that people play for its story? I'm going to go ahead and say no. I think people play this game for the shock value of it, for the bizarre set of characters, which we're not going to get into, and for the straight up action of it as well. Lynn's story isn't really strongest in one, I think. Very bug nuts, parts are interesting in what the fuck fashion, but pretty basic overall. Yeah. To me, when it first came out, people were talking about Drakengard not for its writing, but for the fact that you could ride a dragon, and also it was very bloody. It was considered very violent for the time. Like, you didn't really see, and this is still true today, a lot of RPGs are surprisingly PG with their violence. Like, you really don't see blood that often. You don't see people getting stabbed or run through or cut to pieces. Not a lot of dismemberment. People just mass death. Like, they always talk about it in, like, off-screen. Like, oh, my village was killed and my parents were killed in front of my eyes, or this person kills a lot of people. Things like that. You always hear people talk about it. But in this one, they straight up, you were actually executing a lot of people. As well as just people just straight up dying. It's a very violent. Violence is a language that is pervasive in the language of Drakengard. I feel that violence is part of the delivery of how people communicate with each other in Drakengard 1, 2, and 3. Like, that is simply how we're going to be resolving this issue. We're not discussing it. We're not negotiating it. It's the tip of the sword. So that's where we are for the story in Drakengard. The story in Drakengard 2, by comparison. Noe is still a central protagonist. The story revolves around him. You play as him for pretty much the entirety of it. You learn about the world and unfoldings through his perspective. You learn his motivations. He makes his own choices. He makes his many mistakes. And it wraps up. Drakengard 2 is a story of a boy with aspirations of joining the Knights. Joins the Knights. He has a strange power. Can't quite explain. He was raised by a dragon. Nobody knows why. The prophecy calls him a savior. He doesn't know why or agree with it. Along that way, he learns that there is a class system going on that he initially rejects alongside Mana returning from the first game, where people are being very disenfranchised by the Knights themselves. And as he uncovers that plot, he realizes there's actually a bigger plot afoot that ties into the nature of the seal itself, wishing to divorce that. And in trying to do that, learns the plot of the dragons and the gods themselves. And in the main ending ends up going back to what we did before, which is going back to the seal. Where, yes, it still places us back in that infinite loop that the gods have us in, but at the same time, the dragons, what they have planned for us, isn't better. In fact, surprise, surprise, the dragons reveal that all of humanity was actually just a science experiment by them to become bioorganic weapons to kill the gods. Which, ironically, he ends up fulfilling as a new breed. They just keep calling him the new breed. So that's Drakengard 2's story. It's a story of discovery of a boy who realizes the problems of the world are bigger than just the surface problems. Yes, the Knights are corrupt. The organization I believed in that was so pious ends up being corrupt and backstabs me. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, it's an old hat. For sure. Even the whole thing where the human race is an experiment is an interesting twist, and I was gonna say turn, but I ended up wanting to say twist, so it ended up being torst, is what I said. It's an interesting turn, but we've also seen this before, where, surprise, surprise, the society you live in is actually just a giant experiment for the greater beings of power. Doesn't matter if it's some other authority, it could be anything. But, looks like God is a lie, but also presenting the best solution for me, and if I'm going to bet on humanity, that means I have to be anti-dragon. But oh no, I was also raised by a dragon. Which people are surprisingly chill about. Again, they talk about dragons being in this world, but we only ever see a couple. Would Drakengard 2 be different if Yoko Taro was more involved in the game like he was in part 1? Yes, it would. It would have bigger plot holes. See, Drakengard 2 is actually told the cleanest out of the three. That is one strength of it. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the transitions we make and the roles that people play, there's a lot of plot convenience going on. I don't think that's great, but there also is less room for speculation. They straight up tell you how every character is involved, where the greater puzzle pieces, how they fit together, the twists and the turns, they spell it out for you quite directly. There's really not a lot of open plot guessing. They don't leave a lot to the imagination when it comes to the actual direct storytelling of this game. Drakengard 2 is the most cleanly told story, it's very direct. Yoko Taro very much enjoys leaving giant plot holes, which are filled in later per convenience or in outside avenues, which is inconvenient. And while some people are certainly amused by that, I do have to point out that the greater gaming sphere does not look at that kindly. Most players don't like even looking into how environmental storytelling. They don't like that. They don't like where you have to look through data logs or weapon descriptions for just getting the story that's told. They just want a story told directly. And incidentally, Drakengard 2 I would say is the most... It's gonna sound rude when I say it, but I can't think of a better way to say it. The most mainstream-friendly way to approach storytelling. Does that mean that it's better or worse for it? I argue that it's almost better, because they also don't make the same missteps that Yoko Taro has to work with when you leave giant holes in your storytelling and your lore, and that is continuity. Drakengard 2 respects the continuity of Drakengard 1 way more than Drakengard 3 cares about the continuity of Drakengard 1 in terms of it being a prequel. Because remember, Drakengard 3 is a prequel to Drakengard 1, and Drakengard 2 is a direct sequel to Drakengard 2 is a direct sequel to Drakengard 1. Drakengard 3 is a prequel to Drakengard 1. And 2 respects 1 more than 3 respects 1. It respects it more than Yoko Taro. Yoko Taro doesn't give a shit about that, because remember, he's the one who just took off on a different ending, because if I understand correctly, when I was reading up on the development of this, he didn't really care about any of the endings. He just made endings that were interesting. And there's certainly something artistic about that, where it's, hey, you choose for yourself how this game ends, but because there's gonna be, what eventually became a series, because remember, Yoko Taro wasn't popular, Drakengard was kind of made as like a one-off game. He kind of knew that he would not be given another chance after that. And given how Drakengard ended up between 2 and 3, I think he kind of was okay. Again, Automata Change is a very revisionist history. Nobody cared about Yoko Taro during Drakengard 1. Nobody cared about Drakengard 2 not being under him because he wasn't popular to begin with. That was not a household name. Drakengard 3 came out, people weren't really caring about it. That game sold like ass. Nier came out, people liked the music. The whole shock value of the true ending when you delete your save was very different at the time, but even then Yoko Taro wasn't popular. It was Nier Automata that changed all of it. People forget that Yoko Taro was not popular except for the most recent 5 or 6 years. The previous 20 years, people didn't care about him. That's why people didn't really care about Drakengard 2, the storytelling or differences between 2 or 1, or 1 and 3. People didn't care. It wasn't an issue. It still isn't an issue. People just making a hubbub over nothing. Because, again, revisionist history, he's popular now with Automata, therefore he must have always been popular. No, that is not true. He was a no-name. And relatively speaking, still is. They gave him a few more chances with a couple different mobile games, and they just keep milking that Automata money. Automata is a cow that is still producing milk, and they're absolutely keep milking it. What's that new crossover they just announced with Automata? They just announced a crossover. I can't remember, but I remember them just announcing another crossover. And we were just talking about it, where it's like, yep, get that 2B money. But that's neither here nor there. But believe it or not, I don't believe Yoko Taro's writing is very strong. I actually think he's very mediocre. The themes and the subject matter he talks about, the tone and the approach that he goes with, I find fun, I find thought-provoking, I find refreshing. But the actual writing of the story, the plot, is no great shakes. Because, as we said, Drakengard is a subversive story. It's not a deconstruction story, it's a subversive story. Drakengard 2, pretty traditional. And Drakengard 3 is a dark comedy that I appreciate. Three of them have different tones, three of them have different focuses. I would say he succeeds at conveying those tones, so that all three are well written. You know, he didn't write 2, I know that. And he actually had more people help him. People want to give him all the writing credit on Drakengard 1 and 3, but he had a staff with him that was helping him bounce back ideas, which I think he didn't like. I think I read that somewhere. He didn't like that. He didn't like the director or the producer, like, nixing some of his story elements or something. I don't know. Talk to a more devoted Yoko Taro fan. I don't put the guy in a pillar. He is an artiste, where he has a vision, he works with that vision, they have monetized that vision, and he's just kind of okay with it. Drakengard 3, well, let's finish up Drakengard 2. Drakengard 2, in relation to its story, because it is cleaner told, I would say the theming isn't as interesting in Drakengard 2 as Drakengard 1, but the storytelling in Drakengard 2 is better than Drakengard 1. Drakengard 1 also has a thing where, in the recap, you see me talking about the side characters and the world building. The game actually doesn't present that to you that way. It's all on the side, as you would probably expect by now. Yoko Taro is known for it, but even in this game originally, you don't get it straight up. You have to go find it. And you can't even go find it easily. You have to go find it across a couple playthroughs. It's kind of inconvenient to get the whole picture together. I feel that's much better accomplished in 3 than it is in 1. So 1's theming is strong. 1's storytelling is and the construction, the implementation of the storytelling in 1, was it well conveyed? Did we get these stories across? Was it interesting? Was it fascinating? I would say yes. You know, kind of a mixed bag on that. And 2, the overall theming I think was weaker than 1. They went with some, like I said, other than the fact that everybody is suffering and nobody wins and everybody has to deal with it, I like that sort of bittersweet ending, the whole thing where nobody really gets a happy ending. That is absolutely in 2. People call 2 the relative happiest of the 3, and that's kind of interesting because in the first one you have a dude who hates everything who ends up, you know, growing a heart, and who, in my opinion, kind of gets like better off than 2, where you got a guy with a good heart who fails colossally and saves nobody despite the fact that he has to take on more and more and more disappointment of the entire world around him. And then in 3, you have the crusade of a person who's actively trying to not only kill herself, but the problems of her past, as they continue to be problems to her even now. Who's not really saving the world directly, like that's not her motivation. She's not a saint for it, and she knows it. She doesn't pretend to be. Like she's a lady with a mission. In Drakengard 3's case, the theming for each character is very well done. The presentation of the story is also well done. And the actual story itself is, you play as Zero. She's on a mission to kill her sisters. She kills her sisters. And as it turns out, like all the intoners, they are goddesses that are actually fueled by this flower that's going to be a problem for all of mankind. Not directly stated how, just it's going to be leading to everyone's destruction. Sure, let's just take it at face value. And that's pretty much it. The twists and turns to accomplish, I would say out of all the stories, it's probably the simplest one. She's on a mission to go kill her sister, she kills her sisters. There you go. There's not really as much of a massive revelation of, it turns out we have gods and monsters and things like that. That's really secondary, because first of all, you are a goddess. In 3. It's more about a personal story. It's more actually focused about Zero than it is about the events surrounding her. Drakengard 1 and Drakengard 2, it's more about the events surrounding these characters as they deal with the world throwing its crap on them. And 3 is a woman trying to clean up her crap that's affecting the world. Kind of takes it from a different angle. The DLC is appreciated in 3, especially since it does cleanly put itself into all of the branch storylines and the setup of the characters. I feel it doesn't add as much as it maybe wants to, but they're short to the point and they help reinforce the character themes. I do like how when we go through and complete all of Drakengard 3's story, there's no guesswork in terms of the different branches, such as this what-if branch is more relevant this way, but can't go along with this other what-if branch that goes in this completely different direction. We're allowed to have both. We have our central storyline, and as the story gets more complicated, with now talking about the different timelines, talking about how at the end of each one, Zero is a singularity that causes the ruination, and what she's doing is, from the perspective of an observer, we're watching a timeline unfold where she ends up not becoming not just a singularity, but actually resolving this problem. There's actually that chance, and she finds it. Which makes me curious how I think they bring her back in one of the mobile games. What is it, like, Near something or whatever? It's the mobile game. I don't know what it's called, but I think she comes back in that. At the very end of Drakengard 3, they do say that Zero has a chance of coming back, so they left it open for sequel bait. So when we talk about the story, Near Reincarnation, thank you. Exactly. By the way, Drakengard 3's music is what we're listening to right now. I think it's very good. So, the overall story, the overall theming, where are we going with this? My initial gut reaction is going to be, I think 3, incidentally, is the strongest of the 3 stories. Because of the 3, the core story that's being told is the most simple. It's also accomplished and directed well enough. And the way they layer more of the storytelling complexity onto it with the different timelines and the branches, with the what-if scenarios, with the interactions of Zero and the characters around her, every single iteration of the playthrough adds more to it that doesn't tread on the previous parts. It doesn't require a full playthrough, so it doesn't waste your time. And it's told in a fairly coherent way to where you can identify where parts of this game play into the rest of the Drakengard series without being tied too much of it. I know I said earlier it doesn't respect Drakengard 1, and I think that's to accommodate the players that just straight up didn't play Drakengard 1. It didn't want them to feel obligated to that. All these games do that. They don't, obviously one has a choice, but all of them do not make you obligated to where you have to play the other Drakengard games in order to play it. You absolutely can play just 3 and be okay. You absolutely can play just 2 and be okay. They all stand alone, and I appreciate that. I think it's good on all 3 of them. I also think that the theming of it being a dark comedy works in Drakengard 3's case. It's different. I think it accomplishes it. There are many times where I absolutely did feel like, alright, this comedy is kind of okay. I love that it laughs at itself and it laughs at you, the player character, but it's also creating jokes where it's not directly making, well, it is directly making fun of you in some cases, but it's creating a joke where you can't help but sometimes just laugh at yourself along the way. Like, it makes a joke at your expense, but it's often a joke that lands. I feel that really is, that's something that's hard to pull off, and Drakengard 3 does it. In terms of, like, the characters, we'll get to them later. I want to talk about the characters in the context of the story, but we can't. That's jumping the gun. It really comes down to Drakengard 1 versus Drakengard 2 story. Drakengard 1's story is more important than Drakengard 2's story. We have to take that impact into account. Drakengard 2's story, or Drakengard 1's story, is more important because it leads to 2 other games. Directly. So in terms of impact, that's a pretty big thing. But I have to say, the attempt of subversion of Drakengard, I think, doesn't go any deeper than the fact that it sets up a very simple premise that you think it's going to be one type of story. It also gets rid of that pretense very early on in the game, and you realize you're in a story that is involving a bunch of people that are just unlikable, miserable people in a miserable situation and have miserable ends. It's overall very just... It's meant to be a downer story. I don't know if it really was much of a downer story because I felt I was observing it. I never felt emotionally invested in any of these characters. I don't know if anybody ever can actually find themselves emotionally invested in any of the Drakengard characters. I really don't think it. Like, oh man, I really do sympathize with Oriosh. I really do sympathize with the pedophile Leonard. Do not clip that out of context. And you aren't having a tragic story, whatever. Furiai just being an object of the plot convenience. She really doesn't end up doing very much. She's just there to be protected, and then whatever, she ends up just dying. She ends up really not being that important in any of them. She just ends up either being a plot device or a boss. That doesn't mean anything. The dragons are more important than Furiai. By the way, hold on. Hold on, I'm reading something off the wiki right now. Yeah, according to the wiki, Kaim's parents were killed by Legna. Okay, yeah, and that was discussed in this other side story. Of course, surprise, surprise, that was about his parents. It's called Shini Itaruwaka. So in that story, they do say, yes, it is Legna. Legna is the one that does kill Kaim's parents. So there we go. Yes, whoever mentioned that earlier. JLOS, I read into her character, she was really in love with her brother Kaim. Yeah, I know, they directly say it, because the dragons, remember, the dragons can read into your soul and your mind a little bit, and straight up in the beginning, Angelus was all like, yo man, I ain't gonna say much about this, I'm not here to judge, I hate all humans, I just want to point out your sister's really, like, got the hots for you, just saying. Like, they directly mention it. Wesley, you mentioned it? Alright, well, good catch. They also say in the wiki, in the trivia section, that Legna was acquainted with other dragons in the series, such as Angelus, well, obviously, and Michael. Interesting. So they're saying that Legna also had interactions with Michael. So, whatever. Again, side stuff. Whatever. Not in the games. So, I'm going to give credit to Drakengard 3. I'm going to say the overall historical impact of Drakengard 1 is more than Drakengard 2, even though Drakengard 2's story is both more directly, in my opinion, better told than Drakengard 1. It works both forward and against it, in that we can more seriously scrutinize the weaknesses in 2, while 1 gets to get away with a lot of its plot hole writing, with the fact that it is more well supplemented and supported with outside works. I feel it's cheating, but we still have to, you know, call a spade a spade. Drakengard 1 is simply more well supported than 2. That is just irrefutable. Like that's the objective part of this. Is that regardless of comparing it to itself, we do have to compare the where it was supported. Drakengard 3 also did get very well supported. They even had a manga series or two after it. They did a lot of stuff with Drakengard 3 that we also never got here in the West officially translated. Feel bad for the non-Japanese Drakengard fans. Your path is not an easy one. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we're wrapping up story on this one. 3, then 1, then 2. I'm calling it. Unless anybody wishes to object, I will hear out objections. I feel if you're also going to remember the storylines and the pathings from any of these 3, you're going to remember 3 more than 1 and then 1 more than 2. I really do feel that's how it's going to go. Alright, now we're going to get into the characters, which I feel all 3 games are very character focused. So, first off, we got Drakengard 1. Obviously, we got Kaim, we got Angelus. And then pretty much everyone else after that is a secondary character. Fluriai, Vertile, Leonard, Ariosh, Inuart, Black Dragon, /Legna, Sere, Mana, my mistake, did you say Mana? And then each of the pact partners. What's interesting to me is that the pack partners just literally seem to be just random wanderer-bys who just choose to screw up the life of somebody else. It's very interesting to me why they even bother sometimes. Especially like the case of Fairy with Leonard. Like, forming a pact gives you power, but binding your life in that manner, it kind of makes you wonder what's in it for the actual pact creature. Like in the case of Angelus, she did it because she was literally going to die. Legna's case is weird when you think about Drakengard 2 in case of Drakengard 1. Because if the gods and the dragons are against each other, then why was Legna helping out the Watchers? I think, and it's not supported, but just from the perspective of the game, I think he was doing so because according to the Book of Seeds, they were eventually going to use the Seeds of Destruction to create their ultimate weapon, so he was probably just biding his time until that point because he knew the Book of Prophecies demanded it. So he's just gonna I'm gonna pretend to be helping the gods until I get the organic material I need to create humans, Windows version 11.1. Which to me is okay. I think it's exploiting the lore. Alright, so Kaim. Kaim is... he gets the most amount of character development, but that's also not saying much because there's not a lot of character development to be here. He is a flat, straight-up character. The fact that he's subversive and the fact that he's not this heroic, a noble character, he's very black-hearted, bloodthirsty, murderous. This man is not your friend. You're not supposed to like him. He's kind of an ass, all things considered. He's only nice to literally Angelus later in the story. In the beginning, it's just whatever. The fact that his pack price is his tongue is very convenient for making him a self-insert character. It also kind of cheapens things out, in my opinion, because yes, we see his interaction through behaviors and choices he makes. We don't get a sensation of any of the motivations for it. It's not like he couldn't speak. He speaks to Angelus, and we could be having more character development there, where they could be talking to each other mentally, because they absolutely can and do. But they really don't do that. They really don't take the chance to actually flesh him out in any way. He's just there to be a big old dollar store guts. The reputation of Kaim being the giant black swordsman becoming the Red Dragon Rider. That to me actually gives more character rise to him being this quote unquote savior of the world. This guy who literally found himself saving the world just by literally killing enough people. Kind of funny, that's kind of a realistic example, wouldn't you say? What is it? You kill a few people, you're a murderer. You kill enough people, you're a hero, or something like that? Angelus probably is the more interesting character of the dynamic duo. With Angelus, we actually also see a dramatic character shift of a dragon who, like all dragons, does not value, does not like, humans are fodder, humans are trash, humans are literally alien to this planet. We made them. Like, it's like creating a lab rat and then having that lab rat basically drive you around. There's a lot of pride there, but that pride is almost well-founded because they are the superior species in a way, in many ways. And all that said, she does grow eventually to care enough about one human at least. I don't blame her for not caring about the other humans because every other human she interacts with is a piece of shit. I don't blame her at all. I do not blame her at all. That is the most rational take, which is all the more curious because maybe it's because they shared a soul, maybe it's because she got a chance to look at his actual inner thoughts. But I really do not know why she redeemed Kaim in her eyes. That really isn't clear. Why did she love him? That is so bizarre to me. Why does his sister love him? That's even more bizarre. I bet it's explained in a side story that we're not going to cover here. But anyway, those are the two main characters, Kaim and Angelus. The only character development we get for Inuart is his cutscene and interactions with the opposing party. We get the fact that he's a big old wimp. His pack price being his pack price being Song, that is just as weak as half the dudes in Drakengard 2. Song? Are you telling me you can't carry a rhythm? You can't sing? Is that it? Or you can't play the harp? Is that it? That's your packed price? That seems pretty damn mild. Honestly, all things considered. Because I kind of wish they stuck with something where it's like, some people will say like, oh, your pack price is the thing you care about the most. That's not true. If that's the case, then Kaim would lose his bloodlust. That's clearly the thing he cares the most about. He doesn't give a shit about talking. But, Inuart is kind of a cut and dry character. He's jealous of power, he wants power himself, he pays a price, isn't aware how much he pays, loses out in the end. By the way, I do still think it's so weird that Noe is literally just a weird fusion of Inuart, Free-Eye, and Legna. That's very, I don't know, bizarre. But hey, it's a bio-experiment. You gotta have that weird science. I feel going into Drakengard 2, Kaim and Angelus are probably better represented in the sequel game. We see Angelus's reversion from coming out of the seal, going mad, and then being taken out of that madness. We see the anger, we see the betrayal, we see the emotional damage that's happening. She goes through quite the emotional roller coaster in a short amount of time. It actually is quite interesting because the way how she relates it, speaking for herself. She gets to be her own character I feel more into than 1. I do like how, again, Kaim is better as a support character in 2. Where he's just this feared, mythical person of legend that people both know of and are fearful of. I feel he carries that mysterious presence better when he's this very deadly force of nature. I feel it's carried better in 2. I think Kaim and Angelus are better represented in 2 than 1. I feel there's compelling evidence for that. I feel there's less dead weight. I appreciate that in Drakengard 2 they don't waste time overdeveloping characters that they don't need to. Because 1 has development of side characters, but you have to go out of your way to get it. and it's not on the path, and it's very small for the amount of effort you need to go get it. Noe is a BOW. He is a BOW. He literally is. Straight up tyrant. Oh, I forgot about Sere in the first game. So, if anything, that's evident of how much he mattered. Sere is literally useless in the second game. Like, yeah, he's the leader of the church and guards the seal terribly. Here's the thing. Your seals are so damn important. And you have all these, like, golems around. If you don't bother guarding the last couple of seals with your literal army of golems? Really? Well, how are you so useless? How does he even get captured? How is he so useless? Ceres is like... He's meant to be like this very pure child, like the flower in the battlefield of blood. And they don't do anything interesting with him. They do something interesting in the first one, with especially if you pursue his ending where he chooses to... What is it? He fuses with the giant time creature, the pregnant time creature. And that's how he frees the world or something like that. By locking it in time with him or something. I don't remember. But he is a literal useless idiot in the second one, and it's just like, why are you here, besides fan service? And the first one, too, he just kind of shows up. Like, from what I understand, like, his magic was, something his mother valued. That's why his mother loved him more than Mana. Because Sere was the gifted child. That's why she was willing to die to protect him. Mana is just an abused child, neglected from her parents, and in her desperation for acceptance, companionship, nurturing love, she went with the Watchers. You know, they made her their speaker. She got possessed by a god. Her ending is also not very interesting in 1, by the way. She's more interesting in 2 because she gets a few more lines. She's a little bit more self-motivated, but even that falls out. Because at first she's like this rebel leader, champion of the people, but she really doesn't fight for that towards the end. She ends up just becoming a fated person to help awaken Noe as a BOW's full power. Like, she becomes a plot device. She's really a plot device in both characters, or in both games. But at least she, to me, at least has more personality, where she is overcoming her trauma of dealing with Kaim, overcoming her repressed memories of when she was the leader of the Watchers, overcoming the fact that she is still potentially possessed by the gods themselves, literally able to be a tool. That part's a little bit more interesting, at least. I don't think anybody cares about Vertile, Leonard, or Ariosh, or Inuart. I don't think anybody cares about them. The fact that they all died, good. Actually, no, Vertile didn't die. Vertile literally gets away. He's arguably the most normal out of all of them. Like, if his sin is just freaking out when literally the sky tears open and a bunch of god babies come out and kill everybody, yeah, I don't blame the dude. Get the hell out of that situation, too. Sere was a very missable character in 1, exactly. And they kind of wrote him accordingly. Sere useless in both 1 and 2. Useless Sere. But yeah, like when I looked at it back to back, Golem looks just like one of the old monsters from Drakengard 3 that the disciples summon. So in Drakengard 2, you know, I feel because you have a lot more inter-character relationship, that is probably what helps it the most. Like between Noe and Mana, and Noe and Eris, and even Yurik to a degree. Like, you have, these characters have history with each other, and because they can interact with each other, and their personalities are more well-defined, their relationships are more well-defined, you can find more relatable portions to them to where you can find yourself caring about these characters a little bit. The other Knights of the Seal, half of them are stupid. Like I said, the writing for them is very brief. They're just literally there to serve as bosses. They literally have no other input or relevance whatsoever to the story. They are just bosses. They are throwaway bosses. And they try to make them slightly interesting, but like I said, the sacrifices in their stories are not interesting, and they really don't matter. You're just throwaway bosses. Even Gizmore. Gizmore himself is not fundamentally interesting. He's not fundamentally relevant to the story of Drakengard 2 other than, surprise, surprise, I kill your dad because I want control, and I still want control, so I'm going to kill you. Sarah is still useless. Man, I feel like I'm choosing between two bad casts of characters here. God. I guess we want to look at how they use the characters. At least in 2, Kaim is used more to an emotional and plot-related degree, even though he's not a main character. You know, he's still a driving force for Noe, who believes at some point he's the one who killed. Shit, what did he blame Kaim for? Did he blame him for killing his parents? I'm trying to remember. No, yeah, I think he blamed him for killing that General Orr or whatever, who he kind of viewed as a father figure. They have Eris, who's the childhood friend who literally gets cucked the entire game. You can kind of feel for her a little bit. Gizmore's pact was super weird too. Like, his pact was also, like, his place was also his body, which is just like Yurik. Yurik was also, I sacrifice my body. That just feels really lazy. Like, oh, I'm gonna gain a shadow body because I sacrificed my body. Oh, I'm gonna gain a body that is just reanimated by a Reaper. Like, I don't know, again, the pack writing in 2 was lazy. I feel Drakengard 2, they were designed to be more likable, sympathetic. Sarah and Mana are related to Zero. Yes, they are. They most definitely are. They directly state it too. Like, that's not even speculation. It's directly stated. So that's like the only purpose that seems interesting about Sarah. I just really wish that there was something better done with the Knights of the Seal. I really feel like there's a lot of wasted characters in both of them. The supporting cast in both of them, half the characters are useless. They're just there to be commentary points. At least in the first game, your support team was there to, you know, like, you can play as them, they played very differently, but you were not involved in their motivations or whatever their drive was or resolving their problems. You were not involved with it. You could be, you're not though. Like, you think Kaim gave a shit about anything Arios said or did? No. Kaim indirectly helped Leonard get over some of his past, but really that was Leonard doing more of his own work. And Kaim was just doing Verdelay's dirty work, because Verdelay's pack dragon died. Like, none of these people were friends. You didn't feel any relationships with them. At least in 2, you feel the relationships between all of them, because there's relationships between each of them that's very strong to Noe. Like, Eris and Noe have a very long-lasting relationship. Noe and Legna have a very long-lasting relationship. It's a father-son relationship. Even in their final moments together, the final battle, you see Legna in his mightiest angelic form pause, because even he has been changed and shifted by Noe's relationship to him, to where it gives him pause, and he kind of wishes, if there's any other way we can resolve this, I would prefer it than having to fight each other to the death. They do have a moment like that. That is important. Kaim and Angelus have that moment too, at their during their moment of when they both die. Like Drakengard 2 has a better respect and development for the relationship of Kaim and Angelus than in Drakengard 1. I believe it more in the case of 2 than 1. I'm kind of gonna give Drakengard 2 over Drakengard 1 in this case. I feel it's a cheap shot too that Mana and her relationship to Noe is, oh, it seems kind of shallow because it is shallow, but it's also predetermined by the Book of Seeds. Kind of a cop out. But at the same time, the game did say so, and that is how it went down, so I really can't complain. I can't, like I can say that I don't like it, but that doesn't change the fact that it was there and it was effective and they did exactly what they said they were going to do. So character theming, 1 is stronger than 2 only because they're all freaks and weirdos, but the fact that they're still a band of unlikable assholes, like, whatever. That doesn't change the fact that you didn't do anything clever with that. That was kind of like the shtick, and you didn't do anything interesting with it. At least Drakengard 2, you have a bunch of weirdos, but at least those weirdos do something with their weirdness. They try to be constructive, or there's a point to it. There's some sort of motivation other than being defined by their weird character tilt. So, that's the part where I didn't like where Drakengard 1 did. Like, I'm a pervert. And that's gonna be the one notable thing about me. It's like, okay, whatever. Which, by the way, the theming that they did in 1, the strong theming, they did it correctly in 3. In 3, you did have those weirdos, those freaks and geeks, but they did more than that. They did more and were characters beyond their defining character trait, or character flaw, if you want to even go that far. Every single one of them had personal stories and motivations, and seeing how they clashed across the different timelines and branches was genuinely interesting, and some of them surprising. Like Scent, for example, in every single timeline version, he still loved 3, I believe. Like, that was still prevalent. In some cases where even, like, the whole mockery was that you can't, like, love doesn't fix everything. You know, love isn't the only thing you need in a relationship. I love how they took that idea and spat on it in the ground with a whole bunch of different examples. And they're even, like, everybody there's damaged goods. And they're more than just being the weird animated disciple pigeons that Zero made. Even 1's selfish motivations and the fact that Brother 1 would end up becoming the type of person who, even though it was crafted from her, would still have genuinely interesting philosophical discussions about the motivations, why they're doing it, and how really effective it is. Questioning the position of what we're doing and why we're doing it. I liked that. It made him more interesting than just being a subservient person. Even at the very end, when everybody's dead and he's like, oh shit, my entire reason for existing is literally dead, and the person that I wanted literally dead I actually accomplished. What the hell do I do now with my life? Well, if I could do anything, I guess I want to do this. Surprisingly self-motivated. I respect that. He didn't... It's kind of like giving a good ending to a character off to the side, if you want to call it a good ending. I mean, he just got laughed off the place, but he kind of did end up being the winner in the end. Brother 1. The Accord convenience I didn't love in the very end, where it's like Accord just comes out, chooses now of all times, because I guess it's the one timeline where Zero might actually pull this off against all odds. She intervenes, actually makes it so, which, again, intervention. And then we just get more mystery from it. I don't love that. I don't love that, okay, there's an old city, and they have these time-traveling androids that are pruning and recording timelines, and all that. Who knows where we're going with this. I don't like the answer being more questions. But that is the nature of it. I guess I can also respect the sense of humor in 3. Very macabre, very grim, again, black humor. Everything's very dark in a unironic way. They're not just there to be dramatic, like, oh, we're so dark, and just feeling themselves. With 3, it's very irreverent humor, and I respect that, because they're self-aware. They're aware of the joke. They're not trying to take themselves seriously. They're not taking you seriously, and they don't want you taking them seriously either. And they accomplish that with the writing, even though there are a couple times they do look into the camera and wink. I don't love the times when I look in the camera and wink. I really don't like breaking the fourth wall that often. I'm gonna take a sip of water. But what do you guys think? Any input in terms of points maybe I haven't touched on yet that are worth considering, or perhaps characters you actually really like and want to champion in these 3 games? Open to feedback, by the way. I also like the symbolism in all of the intoners. I like how everything kind of fed back to a point that made sense. It wrapped itself up surprisingly cleanly. Oh, I misread that, JL West. When you said Saray and Mana are related to 0, I read that as Saray and Mana being related to 1. Well, you know, if they're related to 1, then of course they're related to 0, so, yeah. I misunderstood what you said, but I still agree with the whole thing. I mean, because they're all, you know, rip-off clones of her. Technically parts of the flower that she tore off. But I think what I'm gonna do is I am gonna give it to 3 again. 3 then 2 then 1 for characters, I think is where I'm gonna go ahead and call it. I think one of the best strengths of 3 is the fact that they didn't waste the space with their characters. I think it's a big, important feature. Each of the dragons carried a point. Each of the disciples carried a point. And honestly, they didn't waste their space. They had very unique personalities. They all contributed to the story or plot. They made things more interesting. And the intoners, of course, yeah, I like some more than others, even playing as them the same, but they all served a point and they all helped tell a different tragic tale effectively. I think Drakengard 3 also made just the best use of its cast, while still having strong theming, while still being, I'm gonna say, not as relatable as perhaps you can't really invest in them as much as you could in 2, but I feel like the enjoyability, the entertainment factor is higher in 3 than 2, for the characters that is. Again, none of these characters you're supposed to really like, but there are some where I feel like you could end up saying I kinda like them. Blaine haven't played the games, I only know them from the story explanation videos, but I recognize the characters and remember 3 the most, 2 and 1 are a toss-up. Yeah, half the cast in 2 and 1 are just throwaway characters that don't mean anything. 3 made the best use of its characters, so we're gonna lock that in. For characters, 3, then 2, then 1. These next 2 are gonna be very short sections, because these are very cut and dry. I'm going to be perfectly real with you. These are very cut and dry. When it comes to ground combat, it's not even close. Easily, Drakengard 2 is the best one. Easily. There is one thing Drakengard 2 does better than either the 2, and that is the speed, the responsiveness of the controls, the boss fights. Absolutely better in 2 than the other 2. It's so easy. That is such an easy choice. The question now is, which is the most tolerable? Which is the least offensive? The absolute jank of 3, or the absolute ploddingness, like you feel like you're just walking with cement shoes, and how slow and bogged down the combat is of 1. 1's combat straight up boring. Straight up boring combat. And then 3, it's so poorly implemented, but at the same time, you do have an overpowered balance where you have a smaller selection of weapons than, like, say, one. And one, actually, I take that back. Every character had their own assortment of weapons, but it really was kind of simple in the power scale which ones you would use, because you would have to grind usage of them, level them up, unlock stronger combos. It was a little bit more straightforward. In 3, you literally would pick up the different weapon styles from the disciples as you picked them up, and you just kind of kept them. And you had a match game system with certain enemies, like, I'm a shield, you can't just slash at me. You need to use the the chakram one, and, like, hit me from behind cover, or I'm behind a barricade, you have to use the special ability of the spear to bash through my defenses. It had a little bit more of engagement on there, and there were times like the fist combat, for example, that was actually really fun. I think it is pretty obvious. I think it's 3 than 1 in terms of ground combat. It really is that straightforward. 2 is such an improvement over 1. The times where you were on the ground in 1 were a chore. They were literally a chore. And then in 3, it wasn't as much a chore, but it was like, I don't prefer being on the ground versus being on the dragon. The usage of moves and the combo systems, because, like, 2 also had, like, super attacks, and 3 had, like, unique special attacks too. They were just better evolved systems. Frankly, all 3 of them have issues, but the strengths of it also make it easier, just to more measure. So when it comes to ground combat, this is an easy cleanup. 2 than 3 than 1. Very easy on ground combat. How well did they accomplish the goal of being like Dynasty Warriors? I would have to say that they fundamentally failed. I never got the... I don't love the Dynasty Warriors that much. I do like some of the Koei Tecmo games. Like, I like their spin-off games. Like, I liked Hyrule Warriors, I think, was really good. I liked Persona Strikers. I liked... I thought Fire Emblem Warriors was okay. Age of Calamity was also really good. Like, they've done good spin-offs. I did not like Dynasty Warriors Gundam. I thought I would. I actually ended up not liking that game very much. I have friends that loved it, but couldn't get behind it. But I don't feel they understood what made those games so well, and at the very moment, you have a whole bunch of dudes on the screen, but there's a power fantasy of being a one-man army that's implemented so much better in the fluidity, in the visual and physical feedback of combat in Dynasty Warriors versus what they did in Drakengard. But hey, points for trying, maybe? Who knows? When it comes to air combat, this one is also very easy. 3 by a country mile is the best one. In 1 and 2, they handle them in very similar manners, where you have very long... You either have on-rail sections, or you have very wide 3D movement ones, either against other dragons, or angels, or airships, or cubes, tons and tons of cubes, where that's mostly what you're shooting. A lot of stationary targets, or targets that line up in a line. In 1... what's probably the most standout battles are the big ones towards, like, the beginning and the end, where you do have the very big giant titan fight. That was very cool. That was a very cool fight. You really enjoyed flying around as a dragon. All 3 of them are actually, if there's one thing I can compliment on all 3 of the games, flying as the dragon was probably one of the most refining parts, where they clearly spent effort polishing the controls, the battles, the combats, the mechanics, the leveling up of it. I feel they did that more on the dragon sections, more than the ground combat sections, and I kind of agree with that choice, because if you're going to have a thing where you're playing as a dragon, you want to feel powerful, you want it to feel good, you want the flight to feel good, you want the controls to feel good. It gets better as the series goes on, just from a raw control standpoint, from 2 or 3, which is much better than 2, which is more refined than 1. But we still need to take the context of the battles themselves. Like, yes, you can feel good while flying, but what are you fighting that feels so good? In 1, you do have that. You also have the final bosses. The final boss of Mana, not that interesting. The final boss of the giant pregnant time thing, whatever. Fighting against the alien or the holy dragons and the giant demons in the sky, those are okay. But the scaling of it was also really nice. In 2, it's actually kind of boring, to be honest with you. I'm trying to remember if there were... So when you end up becoming... when you fight against Lugna, that's cool. He's a massive, huge dragon. But I'm struggling to think if there's a other good fight. I mean, you have the boss against Kelpie? But Kelpie, I don't know. I don't think the Kelpie fight was all that good. Kelpie's how you kill the Water Guardian, by the way. They totally wimp out. They don't have you go up and cut the lady to pieces. No. You can't kill her. You have to kill her through killing her Guardian. Sure. It would have been cool if you were allowed to participate in the Holy Dragon versus Golem fight. They kind of tie that up in terms of a cinematic, though. Do you guys remember any of the good looking, like even from the recaps or any other videos, if fights from 2 or 1, which ones really stood out as like, wow, this boss was really cool? Because here's what you end up mostly using the dragons for in both of those games, actually all 3 of the games, is actually more 2 and 1, because in 3, we'll get to that in level design, but the way they design the levels, it's more like arena fights. They very much design the areas for specific bosses for dragon usage, versus just kind of using it whenever. And in 2 and 1, they have these big open areas that you can, in many cases, unless you're indoors, can just jump and become the dragon and you're bombarding the battlefield. In fact, in 2, they count on it. That's why you build like a little meter and have a super attack, which is kind of cool, so that's a point there. But in 1, it's mostly just there to rack up the numbers, get the combos, get the XP, get the loot. I am struggling to think of a really cool Drakengard 2 dragon fight. I really am. Because in Drakengard 2, it really feels like they put more of the focus in the ground combat than the dragon. I think I'm already answering my own question. I think it's going to be Drakengard 2 at last, then, yeah, 3, then 1, then 2. Trying to think. I really am. I was like, I'm struggling. I just watched a recap, and I literally cannot think in Drakengard 2. I'm gonna look at Drakengard 2 bosses. Oh, one other thing I thought was super cool in the ground combat is the when you go inside Mana's mind. That was also a really good boss fight too. Ground boss, by the way. It's funny, I look up Drakengard 2 bosses and I get Elden Ring. Even Google doesn't want to acknowledge Drakengard 2. How brutal. Yeah, in fact, almost all the bosses in Drakengard 2 are ground combat. The main one is Angelus, and towards the end. And I feel the Angelus fight just wasn't anything remarkable. Yeah, the fact that I'm thinking so hard and pulling a blank seems like a solid bronze. Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm answering my own question here. Clearly not a good impact. Alright, last one is world and level design. So the world building in all 3 games is a surprisingly important part in their development. The events of the world directly impact what's happening in Drakengard 1 and 2, because you're sent across the world. You know, not directly, there's no overworld map per se. There's no traveling from point A to point B, they're all stage-based. All of the levels are stage-based, which allows us to more easily compare them too, by the way. Because in these stages, we can kind of compare, okay, sometimes you're indoors going from room to room, killing things. It's sort of a dungeon, and it leads to a boss or maybe some side objectives such as last longer, kill this guy, flip a switch, something like that. Or it's going to be some gimmick, something in the level design to make it distinct, or the enemies get upgraded or something like that. And the world itself is adding context to all of that. Why are we doing this? What's going on here? How much variety do we have in these levels from the world they've already constructed? How important is it? All that's tying into the strength of the level design itself, as well as, of course, did we have fun with this? Was this fascinating? Was it fulfilling? Did this feel like a good level? Did we remember that one level? You need to get that sort of response. Drakengard 1. You alternate between inside castle levels that I'm gonna be real. They all look alike. They all look alike. If you took a screenshot from one inside castle level to another inside castle level, not interesting. The most interesting levels, I would have to say, are probably the desert one, because it required you to acquire multiple different mission objectives and bounce around from dragon and ground combat. It mixed up both, and I thought that was a really well designed level. The level where you are helping out Leonard in a sort of ghost town, where you help the kid, turns out the kid's a demon, and Leonard confesses his past. That was actually kind of a cool one. Just for the pure setting of it. The monster arena was a nice idea, was ultimately dumb. Because it just ended up being like everything else, it's just a kill box room, whatever. The ruined city, other than changing the enemies you fight, it's just a ruined city. They didn't really do anything interesting, it's just there for the context of the battle itself. Every single one of the outdoor levels was generic. It literally was a plane. Being in a desert versus being in a field versus being in the woods versus being in a canyon, it didn't matter. They all looked and felt alike. They really didn't do much creative in terms of changing up the mission objectives. It's literally just route the enemy in pretty much all of them. Pretty standard fare. You could argue that makes it very much like a Dynasty Warriors game in its design, but I would say that if that was the case, then it limited itself. They didn't take the opportunity to really be more creative than they could have been. There are almost forgot another one that I thought was actually kind of cool was the level on the sea. Because that one, at least the setting where you're on the boats and you're shooting them, and it was kind of a bit of a timer in a way. That was it. That was okay. That was an okay level. So there are a couple of notable, slightly memorable ones in Drakengard, even though the design and what you're doing and why you're doing it isn't fundamentally interesting. They wanted you to be a blank killbot. You are a blank killbot in Drakengard 1. Drakengard 2 actually does do a good job with level design. There are many maps where you are accomplishing mandatory and optional objectives. Not all of them are just straight up kill everything in the room. Some of them are like protect this person, hold out for this long, flip this switch. They did more gimmicks in some of them, which I think was smarter in the level design too. The urban setting was distinct. I think that was good. The temples at least looked unique. They tried to theme them in interesting ways. Like the time one would just have interesting aesthetics, different visuals, lighting. A tower climbing part, traps. You would have traps and hazards in Drakengard 2. They pretty much improved in every possible way in 2 over 1. The world setting is funny because they both are in the same exact world. I feel the world in 2 is more interesting than the world in 1. Because in the world of 1, it ends up that the gods are coming down and they're trying to, the seal's broken. We have to react the seal because the gods are a bunch of dicks. In Drakengard 2, the seal gets broken by us because we're an idiot. Turns out the gods are dicks, but they're a better alternative than the dragons. And the whole thing with going to the dragon, ancient city in the sky. That whole level is fascinating and cool. Big lore dump, for sure. But I appreciated that was also part puzzle and part story, weaving that into the level design itself. Remember, I love it when the level design works in, like, mechanics. But it's so good when you can work story into mechanics. That's rare, but it's really nice if you can work story into level design. That, I think, is really good. That's why when you get environmental storytelling done right, it is strangely fascinating and very good for that reason. Because it's one of those, you can easily say a picture tells 1,000 words, and that's the whole thing with environmental storytelling. Instead of having a person literally stand there in a cutscene, stare at you, I hate this all the time. I see it so often. I can't dock points because it's so common, but I don't like seeing it. This is the bar where, and keep in mind this because it happens so often, but take a look at how often you have a cutscene where the characters do literally nothing but stand there like mannequins and stare at whoever's actively speaking or something. They don't react, they don't emote, they don't do anything, no body language, they just stand there, and the person who's talking just vomits exposition. That is literally what's happening in the scene. That is the most boring way to deliver story. It is so common, and I don't like that. And that is exactly what happens in these games. They try to mix things up a little bit where in mid-mission you have banter or exposition or at least reactions from the characters. They try to mix things up that way, but the large majority of storytelling is told through very static, very boring cutscenes. Let's see. You're in mansions, you're in planes, you're in sky, you're in the air a lot fighting airships, you're still shooting cubes. They really are so similar, Drakengard 1 and 2. It's amazing when people say, like, the black sheep, like, how is it a black sheep? Where are you seeing that 2 is so much more different than 1? The more I keep talking about it and thinking about it, they are so similar that other than the story and the name and the credits, the fact that the story is quite frankly cleaner told, it's not this pretentious, plot hole ridden nonsense. Could you really tell that this wasn't done by Yoko Taro? Could you really? I really question that, because the two games are so similar. And really, I'm just amazed that people try to find differences when there is way more similar than there is different. I really do not agree with labeling Drakengard 2 as a black sheep. If your only premise is that Yoko Taro had a significantly reduced role in its development, who effing cares? This is the Drakengard series, not the Yoko Taro series. You are attributing way too much to that dude. Not trying to throw shade, I'm just trying to set people's objective perspectives correctly. I do not believe you should look through this through a lens of hero worship, putting this person on a pillar saying that anything they touched is automatically intrinsically better than something they have not touched. What kind of nonsense is that? I feel like I'm getting worked up and talking to somebody who doesn't exist in the chat right now. But I would say Drakengard 2 does a better job of its level design and world design than 1. In conclusion. Let me get some water. By the way, if you are that person in chat, it's okay. You can just say you have a friend like that. Just tell me you have a friend like that. Where it's like, oh yeah, I totally have a friend that completely loves Yoko Taro, thinks everything they touch is gold, and the man is a pariah in the video game industry, horribly under-respected, horribly under-worshipped. It's okay. We're not talking about you, we're talking about your friend. It's okay. I believe you, probably. But yeah, it's like when people say, it's like, Metal Gear would be nowhere without Kojima. I'm like, that's bullshit right there. You can't have a good Metal Gear game without Kojima. Really? Revengeance would disagree. Nonsense. Like, some of the best Zelda games had nothing to do with, Miyamoto. Like, it's perfectly fine just because you started something doesn't mean you're the best at it, you know? It's that whole I created it, therefore I know it best and I can do better. That, I don't know, that seems a bit cocky. There's a little, I have a problem with the hubris level on this one. I feel we need some humble pie here. Like, for example, realistically, let's be real, like 100% real. This has nothing to do with this rating system. So I do story summaries, and I do them in a very particular way. I do not in any way, shape, or form think that I do them better than anyone else. I like the way I do them. I think the manner with which I approach many of them is better for my objective goal of getting just cut and dry story, all killer, no filler, cut the fluff out. I believe I'm effective in that, but I am not going to pretend that one day somebody's not going to come along and do a way better job in any way, shape, or form. Better in script writing, better in narration, absolutely easier, better in production values. I'm a piece of crap when it comes to production values. I absolutely will not entertain that thought. I refuse to let anyone else think the same thing. You can like the content, and I hope that you do. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow. But, think someone can't do it better? Of course. Of course. And you're allowed to say that. I have had some people say that. Where it's, I think this person's coverage of this game was better than yours. And I'm like, great. I'm glad you have options. Yoko Taro is, to me, kind of like George Lucas. George Lucas is a wonderful idea man, and frankly a smart businessman. But when it comes to like writing, directing, he does need a crew to kind of like keep the bad ideas out and keep the good ideas, make them better. You know, he's better with assistance. Oh yeah, right there, Lynn, right there. I think Yoko Taro has interesting ideas, but the man needs a strong-willed minder to keep everything on task and in line with the assignment. I agree. Agree 100%. Anyway, back to the world design. Let's talk about Drakengard 3. Drakengard 3... I want to say is probably the best of the level design. It's kind of weird. I feel like they've gotten better over time. Because 2 improved over 1, and 3 improved over 2. You have a variety of environments that really flesh out the world that you're in. They talk about the history a little bit better inside the context of the game. In those varieties, you do have side objectives, you have side missions. I forgot to mention that. There are side quests in 1, 2, and 3 in terms of what's there to help flesh out the world, and all 3 are exactly there to help flesh out the world. Only through the side quests do you learn about different locations, cultures, and even your side characters in 1. That's literally where all that exists. And in 2, there's less of that. There's almost no side quests in 2 because most of that writing is already written into the main story. The choices you have in 2 are much less than 1. It's much more linear. In fact, it actually is a completely linear experience. You don't have this overworld map where you have the choice of going to... Some people criticize that, but I think it's better for it. Just like you always do these days, open world versus linear stories. With linear stories, you get focus. You sacrifice quote-unquote freedom and you go for focus. In 1, you had the freedom to choose different locations, but whenever you went back to a location, for the most part, unless it triggered a story plot that had a different cutscene, you were mostly going there to grind. It was just grind. There's so much grinding in 1. And in 2, you're on rails. But in that on rails, they have a chance to control the pacing, control the story, and literally feed you a healthy amount of story at a very strong pace. So you have that, and that's incorporated into the level design as well. There's really not a lot of levels that feel like filler in 2. There are certainly objectives at times that feel like filler. I feel like they're just a waste of time to pad out the game. I think they're all guilty of that, honestly. 3 especially, let's be real for real. 3 has a lot of padding. But 2, the padding in 2, very minimum, very on point. 3's padding is absolute padding. The side quests that you have in 3 do not add much to the overall side story content at all. The good news is that there's relatively few of them. The grand majority of the time, you're mostly just going through hack and slashing, finding optional treasures, and they may not all lead to very interesting plot points. They may not all lead to clever dialogue, witty banter, or even a cutscene. but at least you get a lot of unique gimmicks. Like, you get puzzle platforming parts, you get like the desert gimmick where during the sun, like, it damages you, but at night it'll sap out your magic, I think what it was. So you have to like constantly move and battle in within the shade, or the you're on a timer. Let's see. You had to raise and lower the water levels in some sections. You had to hit switches, solve logic puzzles a little bit. Like, the stuff that they did in Nier, for example, later on with some of the dungeons for just some gimmicks to kind of add a little bit of level of interactivity. We're not comparing Nier to Drakengard. We might when we get too near, just to make it more interesting, but I think we shouldn't. Nier, as far as I can tell, is not dead. If anything, it refuses to not die with Automata. They won't move on and make another game. But with 3, I feel the level design is just, they improved it. They made it more relevant, they made it more interesting, they themed the enemies better with the environments as well. Like I said, like 3, I feel like the enemy variety is fewer, but they also themed it to the levels better. You recycle a lot of enemies in all of these games. That's kind of the thing with these Dynasty Warriors-esque games. You're gonna fight thousands of the same looking dude. You're gonna be tired of looking at the same dude. I think that's part of one thing that, for the overall experience, I did get tired of, is the grindy nature in all 3 games of the fact that you are hack and slashing through a whole bunch of just literally identical dudes. And I know that's a weak argument, because in every hack and slash game you are absolutely going through hundreds of the identical dudes, because that's the entire point of a hack and slash. I get it. I'm just saying that I'm just less interested in it. Or maybe that's just how my perspective has gone on over the years. I think I'm rambling at this point. The music in the background, by the way, kicks ass. I think I'm going to give 2 over 3 over 1. I feel this is a series that has only improved in age. Dragon Age. Alright, so world is going to be 3, then 2, then 1. Some do a better job of reskinning the base model. You know what? I think I'm going to agree with you. Some just, you feel the fatigue with what you're doing, the repetitive nature of it, better than others. Like, there are a lot of, like, and I feel that's part of, like, with the combat, too. Like, how much are you enjoying what you're doing? Like, there are some levels and some intoners in 3 that are just more fun to play as. And Drakengard 2 did a good job of making the ground combat feel better, so even if you're hack and slash dude, at least you're enjoying that. While, again, in Drakengard 1, it felt like a chore. You're just getting from point A to point B. And it dragged it out with those missions to just grind. Alright. We have our basic results. So let's tally them up, and then let's add our own bias and see what changes. So, Drakengard 1 gets 1, then 1, then 1, so 3, then 2, it's 5, then 1. Wow. 6 points for Drakengard 1. It kind of was last in all of them except for air combat. Drakengard 2 gets 2, plus 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7, plus 1 is 8, plus 2 is 10. And Drakengard 3 gets 3 plus 3, which is 6, plus another 2, which is 8, plus another 3, which is 11, plus another 3, which is 14. So yeah, the spacing is pretty savage on all of them. Where Drakengard 1 gets 6 points, Drakengard 2 gets 10 points, Drakengard 3 gets 14 points. Do we feel that is the natural progression of the series? Do we feel like it has dramatically improved overall as a package from 1 to 2 to 3? Because if I were to add my own personal bias, you put all 3 games and you said you have to play these games in this order, which one do you feel like playing the most? I would Personal preference, I kind of want to say 2 first. Because what they did well, they kept you doing. So even though the dragon and flying levels were pretty mundane and not very interesting, you were on the ground for almost all the game. And the ground was the most interesting part. And the dungeons and the bosses you were fighting are easily on the ground the best of the entire series. So they doubled down on what they did well. The boss arenas, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned enough in 3, but the sheer variety of the large-scale, huge, big monster fights, they felt like kaiju battles, and that was legit cool. So, again, I know 3 wanted air combat anyway, just to double down on that. Personal bias, I would probably say 2. Better 3 than 1, honestly. So if I were to add that in, that would make Drakengard 7, Drakengard 2 13, and Drakengard 3 15. I feel Drakengard is a series that did in fact get better as time went on. All of them, however, felt and ran like low-budget games. None of them sold notoriously well. I think Drakengard Legacy is always going to be that one series where you could ride a dragon, and it was the prequel to Nier. But I feel each of these games are good because they stand on their own. They're all okay games. I'm going to be real, I do not miss the fact or even think about these games after the fact that I recap them. They're over and done with. I'm okay if I never play them again. And it's not that I think that they're bad, because in some cases they kind of are kind of boring. It's just that they feel like one and dones. They are one and dones. You get what you need and you move on. I don't find any of the games that fundamentally interesting where, like in Drakengard 1, if you want to get a different ending, you're going to have to just simply go back and get it. And 2, you would have to, I think you can reload a save. Or you have to play the entire game over again. I think in 2 you have to play the entire game over again. In 3 though, you don't have to do anything, you just play the game. And it goes through all the branches naturally, it ties them together much more coherently. I feel like it respects your time a little bit more, but at least Drakengard 2 is short. Which I think is ironically a strength in this case. I feel there's too much padding in 3, and in 1, the grinding is a detriment. Like, I have issues with all 3 of these. But final score, Drakengard 3 15, Drakengard 2 13, Drakengard 1 7, if we add in our biases. But honestly, even without the biases, that's still the score order. So there we go. We have compared all 3 games on the pillars of story, characters, ground combat, air combat, and world/level design. Do I want to look at this community rank? I don't know if I want to look at this community rank, but I kind of want to look at this community rank. I feel like I'm going to get a bunch of stupid... should I have so little faith in humanity just like the Drakengard series does? I wonder. What do you guys think? Would you have rated them the same way in terms of the order, the overall order? In terms of preference, for me it's going to be 2 then 3 then 1. Even though people are going to say 2 is the worst one, how? Justify that statement to me. Tell me how it's worse. Oh, Yoko Taro didn't direct him out. That honestly helped it. That honestly helped it. Because Kaguya didn't make the combat and Yoko Taro didn't touch the story, in my opinion, helped Drakengard 2 in many ways. F your cult religion. Seen too many damn battlefields to love any one creator for one of them, which to me is the blessing of recap. You feel like you're just traveling from one world to another, and when you come in, you see the settlers on one piece of land where it's like, this is Yoko Taro land, we love Yoko Taro. I'm like, huh, okay, well, let's take a look around. You can't help but feel like I don't objectively agree with some of these perspectives, but alright. I just don't feel like there's evidence supporting it. We're gonna be evidence-based here. We believe in science. Do it? You know what? I kind of want to. We got time, honestly. We got a little bit of time. Let's take a look at the community rank. Let's be disappointed in our peers. All right, let's take a look. Oh, we got a bunch of people. Not that many people. Okay, let's take a look at this. So this person thinks Automata and Nier Replicant are S tier, followed by Drakengard 3. All right, okay, I'm feeling that. Drakengard 1 and Gestalt the same. I'm not gonna lie, I would rate these two the same. And then 2 all the way down here. What a fucking idiot. I do, however, agree that Automata is better than 3, but Replicant better than 3? I don't know about that, Chief. This should not be such a gap. This should not be such a gap. I do not think that the extra bonus ending and the fact that it looks HD and... Oh, actually, maybe I think they did fix the combat, didn't they? Maybe this is a wide enough gap. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it isn't as jank and has the fluff or killer problems as 3. I have a hard time believing though that just on pure substance is that much of a gap. I do agree with these being so. I would rate these two the same. I would probably put this down here, and and then this up here. But I don't know. I think that's bullshit. All right, let's take a look at this one. What are some of these languages? I don't speak this, but looking at it, what is it? Master, Supreme, Taro, God, sex with me. I guess he just wants to make out with Yoko Taro. And yet he puts Nier Replicant there. Man, I gotta recap Nier Replicant if it's this allegedly good. Maybe I am getting it wrong. I'm open to being wrong. I do not know what that says. If you're going to the store to buy these games, you'd pick 3, then 1, then 2. I would be okay with that, honestly, with 3 being the most, because, again, 3 I had a good time. I just feel it could be trimmed up. And you also want DLC with that, too, so you're going to have to buy some DLC with that. Not saying DLC bad, I'm just pointing out that they don't sell it as a complete package, you have to get it separately to get the complete experience. This person hated 3, though. He made his own low thing. I guess it's appropriate that the Drakengard 3 tier has Drakengard 3. This guy didn't play, I guess, at least he didn't rate the games he didn't play. He considers Automata in the same tier as Drakengard. I don't know what this says, but, bro, no, I do not agree with that. At the very least, this follows a bell curve, so I have to respect that he does follow a bell curve, so that makes it at least curved. Unlike this idiot over here. What kind of... This is not a tier list, this is a favorites list. Clearly likes 3, clearly likes 1, clearly likes Replicant and Gestalt. At least you made them equivalent. And then thinks Automata and then 2 is so bad. I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely curious about that rating. You really think Automata is worse by 2 tiers than Drakengard 1? Oh my god, I am curious what goes on in the heads of this person. This is what I expect most people would say. This, I think, is like generic as hell. They worship Automata. They think the Nier games are also just objectively better than anything Drakengard, which I would disagree. I would say Drakengard 3 is better than either the Niers, in my opinion. And then 1 and then 2 is the worst one. This is chump. This is a person who listens to YouTubers for their opinion. By the way, don't ever listen to YouTubers for their opinion. Mine own included. Think for yourself. Alright, this person also puts Nier Automata, which I'm not disagreeing with Nier Automata. In my opinion, Nier Automata is the best of the Yoko Taro main games that came out. I would also agree with that. Nier Automata is like one of the few games I even put on my A tier. A minus, grant you, but I would still put it there. It is that much of a complete package. But to sit there and pretend that Drakengard 3 is so far below it, especially with Nier being the gap there, no. You're also gonna have to really tell me why you think 2 is literally worse than 1 when 2 does everything 1 does but better, except the dragon combat. This one's almost the same exact effing list. Jesus Christ, all you did was just move Drakengard down here and then put Nier over here. It's almost the same list. This person's also just puts their favorites. I liked both the original Niers and I like Drakengard 3. Well, I appreciate you like Drakengard 3 more than Automata. I also respect that you put 2 over 1. This actually is kind of close to what I ranked it. I would switch up, if I were to do this nonsense right here, I would have to put Nier Replicant out because I haven't played it yet to really know and really evaluate it. But I would put Automata top, then I would put... Actually, I can literally... Oh, it doesn't matter. I literally have it up here. Oh no, I can't. This isn't mine. This is the other person's. Forgot I'm on the community page. Oki, I'm going to say right now, I think you're playing favorites. At the same time, I don't radically disagree with your favorites. I am thrilled that you like Nier so much more. But man, Nier being second seat to Automata, I really want to hear your rationale for that, man. Also, this is not a bell curve. What the hell is this crap playing favorites? Get out of here. Get out of that top 10 nonsense. And then we got Dabbing Penguin over here, who's got Automata, followed by Drakengard 3, followed by the Niers, followed by 2. Actually, I almost perfectly agree with this list. I think that's exactly how I would list it. And in fact, I do think that's exactly how I would list it. Damn, Dabbing Penguin, you did my work for me. I would actually, this would be my list. First of all, I love that this is bell-shaped. Beautiful bell shape. Look, perfect in symmetry. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. And I 100% agree. I would definitely pick Automata, and then 3 I would probably play more. Even though I said I liked 2 more, there's a difference between me liking something and me wanting to play something. I enjoyed 2 a lot, but 3 also was a very fun game. It also was a game that you had to laugh at. If you had a sense of humor, you're good. Okay, I liked roasting the community. You're right, that was fun. I'm going to do that more often in the future. If you don't like me throwing shade at others, I apologize, but that's my anti-drug. One thing I love is that nobody bothered changing their tiers except for that one dude in a different language. Nobody cares about context. But okay. With that, I believe we're done. I hope the music wasn't too loud. Was the music too loud? Or was I too loud? Drakengard 3 is good music. The mod is very good music. People say Nier had really, really good music. I don't remember it having very, very good music. But I guess when I go to Replicant, maybe I'll be reminded. But with that, we are basically concluded for our first foray into Yoko Taro Land. It's good to see that at least a small portion of the community is thinking on the same page as me. I love that confirmation bias. And yeah, with that, next week, it really depends on how fast myself and my team can complete the new raid in Destiny 2. If it's gonna, because we're going for the 24-hour thing, so if we can beat it, then we'll be good. If my Saturday is open, depends on how tired I am. But we will probably just stay focused, or not stay focused, stay subscribed, have notifications turned on, because if I do post, I will of course post a community page. I'll post it on my Discord, links in the description below. I do kick myself and apologize slightly for not having a recap up as much as I wanted to. It just ended up being longer and more detailed than I thought it was, and I did not manage my time effectively. But it will be up tomorrow, and that recap is going to be The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky 2nd chapter, something that's overdue. Going into the Trails universe, that long-ass saga, finally picking up that, well, trail again. So we're going into that again. So please look forward to that. That will be up tomorrow. And next week, I think I'm going to do probably Danganronpa. That'll be the next watch along as Danganronpa, and we'll probably wrap it up with 999 or Zero Escape. Zero Escape's going to be a weird one. It's like, how do you really compare these? But we can absolutely compare this if we really put our mind to it. So Danganronpa next watch along, likely next week. I have faith in my team, but stay tuned all the same. Please look forward to the next recap, and thank you so much for watching and sticking around this entire time. And until then, I will see you guys on the next Battlefield. Thank you so much for watching.